spot it. Can't see it.
You don't get the audience. The audience? No, when you come up to speak. Oh, well, take a good picture. Otherwise, yeah, we should have a, if it's not good, I don't want to see it. Flatter me. We have a makeup artist here.
No, it's fine.
You know Kevin, Gary, George? Yeah, we walked around. I recognize the name, yeah. They all take pictures of them. I go, you don't flatter me, I don't want to see it.
And no trash, no problem. She got here the second. I got like 27 text messages. Listen, I got more to do than just sign. No, I'm happy to. I just wasn't paying attention. Yeah. It's hard. There ain't no doubt about it. Let's do some business. We're thinking. I'm glad it's here for PFL stuff. It's not for PFL, but it's what else? The last one. It's actually doing that now. And we should actually make that one big another one just off. That'd be awesome. My favorite is just never parking on the fair. Yeah, it's the best. And so that's like 30 foot. As long as we're yeah. I mean, the ordinances that trailer parking somewhere, and then we get it every morning. You know, we'll some of it. I don't know if I heard. But that's hard. Yeah, no, I'm glad you know. We were there before, and some people have said, well, because you don't know if it's going to put something. I got a treasure. You know, we've talked
Anybody over 200 pounds is gonna break off.
Okay. It's kind of legit. I guess my neighbor will do that.
Yeah.
I think it is time.
Other step down. Well, that's.
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Present.
Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Commissioner Sandberg. Present. Commissioner Levy.
Here.
We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So sidebar. So what else? I had a teacher that would make us redo it. We always took the box. And so every time I say it, and I didn't know if there was a tough way or not. We can't hear, but we're supposed to.
Sarah, do you want to call me your,
Sorry, it was just a sidebar joke about the pledge.
Oh,
Not about the pledge, but how we say it, sorry.
first have public comment, and I want to remind everyone that public comment is open to anyone with concern and, or a question, but it should not, your comment or concern should not address anything that we are covering later in the agenda, if that helps.
If we're on the agendas, can you tell me what's on the agenda?
Yes. So we have our consent items. We have no proclamations. We have scheduled public comment and no public comments. We have 3 ordinances, and I'm sorry, I missed the 3 public hearings, sorry, and then we have some action items. So please.
Everything I have is falls within that guideline.
All right, good. So please come to the podium, say your name and address, and don't forget to sign in at some point.
my name is Nancy Atkins. I live at 810 East Calendar. I think a lot of people know me. I'll just briefly say that I was born in Billings but raised in Livingston, then moved away for work and moved back in about 2008. I have attended many of the meetings here. I am concerned about this ordinance, I believe it's 2071 from light industrial to highway commercial. And when that was passed,
Nancy, can I take one moment? Because we're talking about that item later, that's when you say your public comment
oh, I thought I,
related to it.
Oh,
So at this time, anything other than what's on our
Okay.
agenda?
okay.
Okay.
Well, let me just say that
other than the, okay, I just want to say, I think the streets look wonderful. I said that to Mike. But I think we're going to have to work especially hard to keep downtown clean and free and open. And I say that as a member of the senior center, where sometimes it's so difficult to navigate that we lose a lot of business, not just there, but at the other stores. So I'll have to say that for now. Thank you. I didn't understand.
All right. Any other public comment?
Jake Eager, 345 South Main. Well, I'd like to address, I'll start out with what Nancy talked about, the sidewalks. The sidewalks are nice, but when you consider that the sidewalks were the historical district and every other sidewalk that has been poured since 1977 when I came here, that it has always been imprinted 1908 on every sidewalk that has been poured, except this one. When you consider that it was the historical district, I wonder who from the city can sort of tell me what kind of oversight happened on that screw up. Since my last visit to, I know I've been absent, you've all been park voted. There's been some things that have come up. I feel that you, as city commissioners and county commissioners, respectively, think you're supervising Santa Rosa, California, and Sonoma County, respectively. The increase in water and sewage adjustments the pay adjustment upward to the current city manager. At the last meeting that I attended, the city manager advised you, commissioners, that he has talked with the union representing the police and dispatchers, that they would receive a 4% increase in their salary. I would like to ask you, what other private sector employees in this audience have received this kind of an increase? The Supreme Court ruled shortly after Mr. Cardos's announcement that public sector employees would not have to pay into a union. And I was wondering if any way has been a factor in any one of your deliberations? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis, do you want to answer the question on the second or the third question, increases and negotiations?
If you're talking about the Supreme Court decision that any public employee does not have to pay into the unions, the contract was completed before that ruling came out.
Oh, what for you,
How about with the increases on salaries for other public employees?
I'm not sure which part of the employees, so it'd be tough to speak to unless there's a specific increase you're concerned about.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't, it doesn't really, you don't look good at trying to play dumb, sir.
Jay,
No,
don't forget to be respectful.
I'm getting sick and tired of people saying that the council deserves respect. Just respect, I want to remind you, is earned. It is not bestowed upon you upon your election.
No, and
Thank you very
same
much.
to
Good
you.
day.
Same to you, Jay. Great, any other public comment? Last call. All right. So tonight, with the consent items, commissioners, we have two consent items. Do we have a motion on the consent items?
Yeah, I make a motion with consent items A and B.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Maybe. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Four.
Commissioner Friedman?
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg? 4. Commissioner Maybe?
4.
Motion passes. We have no proclamations, no scheduled public comments, and 3 public hearings Our first public hearing is on ordinance number 2071, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 30.13 of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Official Zoning Map of the City of Livingston by rezoning parcel 1, 2, and 3 of Certificate of Survey 1941 from Light Industrial LI to Highway Commercial HC. Mr. Carduce.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Lisa, can you go to the wildlife one? Or no, let's go to zoning one first.
So for a quick overview of how we got to where we are on this particular ordinance, a zoning change request was put in from the landowners in the section that we're going to talk about. And up on the screen, if you look, it's the dark blue section on the right. You can see it's just in the bend of Highway 10 there next to the interstate. To request to rezone that parcel from light industrial to highway commercial. The first step in that process is it goes to the zoning commission. The zoning commission receives the request, staff completes a staff report on the applicability of a change. In this case, state law determines that there's a 8-prong test that they have to go through and answer the questions. I'm sorry, 9-prong. Those are in the staff report that we reviewed both in the zoning commission and in the last commission meeting. They deal with what the landowners' rights are as far as being able to use their property, as well as what the commission's concerns are as they look through it. So that particular property, one of the things you look at is the surrounding properties that fit in with the surrounding property. In this case, the parcel directly across the highway is already zoned highway commercial. And then you look at the differences in what does that change actually imply. So there's a list of things that is available in highway commercial that is not available in light industrial. And there's a couple things that are available in light industrial that are not available in highway commercial. So that is a shorter list. So things that if it changed that could no longer be built there are a hospital or an adult foster care center. So those uses would no longer be available for there. If it was rezoned to highway commercial, the uses that would be added that aren't currently there are, and these are probably the biggest two, are gas stations and residential housing. As far as the residential housing goes, it's the spectrum of the residential housing. It's single family, duplex, multifamily housing is allowed in highway commercial. The other items that are allowed in highway commercial that are not allowed in light industrial are kennels, laundries, bed and breakfast, travel trailer parks, auto repair centers, transportation terminals, government offices, and churches. So those are the things that could be added. A lot of the concerns have revolved around restaurants, whether they're fast food or sit down, or hotels, or commercial offices and retail stores. All of those uses are already currently available under light industrial, so a change to highway commercial doesn't change that. Those are available currently. And as far as the district goes, even the housing and the gas stations are available across the street. So any of those uses are available in the immediate area. Most of those uses are available on the current property. So that went through the process with the zoning commission. The zoning commission recommended 5-0, or unanimously, that's how many people are voting. Recommended unanimously that the zone change be approved by the commission. It was brought before you for the first reading. It was voted on to move to this particular second reading, where this would become final in 30 days after the approach.
Can you flip over to the state wildlife one? Yes.
I think when you were listing off the list of things, I think two things that were missed are bars can be in highway commercial, not light industrial. And the other is it definitely delineates out the drive-in restaurants. You cannot have those in light industrial, but you can have them in highway commercial.
Double check on the drive-in restaurants.
Well, I was just pulling it up here.
Surely you can pull that up. And I'll verify that.
Okay.
Some of the wildlife concerns were the wetland areas that surround PFL. This is a better map than we had before. We figured out how to run the state's website a little bit better. You can see the current PFL sits right there on PFL Way and Antelope Drive. The parcel of land to the east is mainly emerging wetlands. So emerging wetland is one that's not wet year round, but does have some aspects of grasses or mosses that may be considered wetlands. You can see it's already cut through by the railroad tracks and Highway 10 and the old Highway 10 rail bed. Any development in those areas would have to be cleared through DEQ. There's a lot of requirements that would have to happen before anything could be built that, and that is regardless of what the zoning is, anyone would have to go through DEQ to develop any of those pieces. As far as about threats to the wildlife area, you can see that most of this property does not border that. There are a couple on the west. And if you look in the east there in the little, I guess the little pocket there around the, inside the wetland is actually the current truck stop, which is in the county, so it is not zoned according to city rules. So there's already a truck stop / gas station in this specific vicinity directly adjacent to the wetland areas. Yes, and the repair shop. So those were some of the environmental issues that were raised for the rezoning. Other than that, there's not much difference between highway commercial and light industrial and effect on wildlife. Any development, obviously.
So primarily, anything we're looking here, south of 10 is the light green, it's basically county anyway, right?
No, that particular, almost all of that light green you see there is the eastern tract of, that's currently inside the city.
Oh, sorry, yes, I see that, and it's the truck stop is further down.
Yes.
East.
So almost exactly where that wetland ends is the city boundary.
Gotcha, thank you.
So, regardless of what's built there, there will be disruption to wildlife. Obviously, any development affects wildlife in that manner. So, but not a huge difference between highway commercial and light industrial. I think the other main concerns were traffic related as far as entrances and exits that go from the property itself. Again, that will have to be negotiated with MDT. The Department of Transportation will have the rules. If it's their highway, they will determine where entrances and exits can be. They will also determine the speed limits depending on growth, traffic counts. Any of that adjustment will be done by the Department of Transportation. As far as procedurally what the ordinance on the agenda for tonight is, it doesn't approve any particular development. It doesn't approve any particular development plan. It only rezones that parcel to highway commercial. PFL, well, the developers in this area have provided a concept of what could be developed there, but that is only a concept. None of those things have to be developed if this is rezoned. Anything that fits the requirements for highway commercial and fits under current city building codes and zoning regulations would be allowed in that area once zoned highway commercial. There has been some discussion about why does a decision have to be made. Procedurally, a decision has to be made because there was an application. So the landowners made the application. It has gone through the process. Whether we would prefer more planning or less planning documents, or we prefer them to be in a different state, we still have to give the applicants an answer because it's their due process rights. So the choices are yes or no. There's not really, it can be tabled, but only for a certain amount of time. It's not an indefinite delay in the decision. So that kind of gives a background of where we were, how we got here, and what our options are.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Cardus before we open it to the public? What he just presented, and we'll come back to us.
Right.
Go ahead, sir.
I guess I just need to clarify what I have here is not accurate. Mike, I would need to know.
I am on the code right now just to verify what that was. Is that, do you have a date on that one?
I don't, I just printed off the pages. It's whatever's on the planning board link.
Okay, so the one in the current online code does not delineate bars or drive-in restaurants. In table, actually, are you looking at?
30-40.
Yeah, table 30-40. Yeah, the current list of uses on the current code does not break those two up.
And so which do we take as the source of truth?
This is the current up-to-date code.
Okay, current up to date. And then when I noticed some of them have an S designation to it, that's a special exception permit required. What's the process to do that under, so for instance, church is one of them that requires a special exception permit. What's that process?
I can't tell you the exact process, but it would have to go through the city city planning department through the planning board. I don't know, Jim, do you know if it has to come all the way up to commission for approval for a special use permit?
No, it's similar to a variance, but it's a variance for a specific use, which is, a variance is for physical parameters, setbacks, height, lot coverage. The special exception is ultimately a variance for a use not allowed by right.
So does the Board of Adjustments make that decision as well?
They do.
Okay, so it's a Board of Adjustments process.
What was that last thing you said? It was a use not by right? What
Not
was it?
allowed by right as an A in that chart.
Okay.
And it's for that specific use.
So it just basically means you may or may not, depending on if you get approval.
Correct. It's a
Okay.
public hearing process.
Thank you.
I have one question before we open it to public comment. As far as light industrial versus highway commercial, could you explain some of the requirements as far as building styles, building, I know we've discussed the actual projects or potential businesses. What about the difference between design and various things like that?
So there are no specific design criteria between light industrial and highway commercial, unless there's an overlay on top of it, which we don't currently have in any of these areas. So sorry, I was double checking something. So it is the same types of buildings can be built in either. So there's no design criteria, just the current statutes for our design standards that apply to all buildings, uniform building code, and light. And I misspoke when I said they're not in there. They're in there. They're both A now for drive-ins and
Or which,
for bars and drive-ins. Both highway commercial and light industrial are A listed. They're the same.
okay, so you can do it in light industrial.
You can do it in light industrial or highway commercial.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will open it to public comment. And again, you say your name and address and sign in.
My name is Nancy Atkins. I live at 810 East Counter. And first of all, I want to comment that I attended a meeting in which this was changed to light industrial. Vicki Blakeman was a council person at that time. And she said at that time that she felt she was making a big mistake to make it to light industrial. Now, the other thing is this is completely unclear about what can be done and what can't be done. To me, coming in as a resident, I suggest that you say no until you get all the facts clear and everybody understands. I am very concerned because when you start building out and you build the suburbs, I've lived in many places, one being Seattle and other places. But once you start building out and allowing a lot of different things, then you take away from downtown. These business owners have spent a fortune right now. Some told me even $14,000 that they've had to borrow. They are working very hard. Some of them had to take loans to pay that back. We may see businesses go bankrupt, and I don't think in any way we should have any more businesses. If the truck stop is already out there, the gas station's out there, that is sufficient. I am not opposed to homes out there, but all roads should lead to downtown. I feel that the downtown is the heart of Livingston. And once you tear the heart away, you've ruined Livingston. It's happened in so many places. All you need to do is look around at the various cities. When you go to Kalispell now, what do you think of Kalispell? Do you think of its downtown? I don't think so. You think of its suburbs. You think of the Targets and all those stores. I know, I've been there many years. That's only a minor thing. It still has a downtown. But I can tell you, if you look around at a lot of these little towns, they are completely empty. They're ghost towns. We've invested a fortune in the downtown. Let's help our downtown people. And there are a lot of homes in Livingston that are available. They can be redone. I spent $100,000 in my home to keep it up, put it up to date with electrical, plumbing, and everything. And it's a beautiful home. I just think we really need to seriously think about what we want Livingston to look like in the future. And I will mention one more thing. When I've helped at the Depot Museum for many years, and people tell me over and over again, I came in to get gas or to eat. And when I came in to get gas or eat, I'd never been in Livingston before. And I found out what a beautiful little downtown it was. I'm going to come back. I'm going to spend more time there. Then they went to the various businesses. They asked me where the restaurants were, the thrift stores, these are the big ones, and this type of thing. Once you let any kind of new development go out, like gas stations and restaurants, people will not come downtown anymore. So anyway, whether you agree with me or not, believe me, my heart, I think you're going to ruin our heart.
Thank you, Nancy.
I need a pen. There wasn't a pen there. I don't need a pen.
Any other public comment?
Patricia Graybo, 204 East Callender Street, the Graybo Building, downtown Livingston. I am imploring you to please consider voting no tonight. It is not a forever vote. In a year they'll have to come back and make the request, and everybody will be prepared at that point to really begin to answer some of the questions that this whole thing raises for us. This is not the time to vote yes. Everything is in transition. Printing for Less is in transition. They have just been taken over to a significant degree by Goldman Sachs. And I am told, I appreciate the enterprise already putting in my letter to the editor, but they left out the most important part, which is the investor for this subdivision you're talking about is Goldman Sachs. And frankly, our little downtown businesses and our little town doesn't have the lawyers or anything else to come up against Goldman Sachs once they feel they have their foot in the door. And I don't think that Printing for Less has come to terms with that kind of investor, but the money that's going to go into this development will come from Goldman Sachs. And we aren't prepared for this. There is no overlay. There is no design standards that apply to this. I voted if we could show that. And our city is in transition too. We know we're facing growth, and yet we're not prepared to face growth. I had a nice talk with the city manager, but you know what? We don't have one single person on the staff who has any kind of master's degree in urban design. We rely on the city manager and an engineer, and frankly, engineers are the worst urban planners there are. It is an entire discipline. We need a master's level, adding to our city planner, a master's level planner to actually help us create the kind of picture that we want for our town. Our town is at a disadvantage, and an advantage MDT has ruined more towns than you can count. We do not want to become like Great Falls, where they strip zone, and we're about ready to strip zone Livingston without an urban planner. We're about ready to strip zone for an 8-mile length. And we need someone who also has a master's level economics degree on staff so that our businesses can grow. I just came back from Whitefish. the two things they had going for them were the kind of professionalism that we need right now, economics and urban planning, and it does not exist right now. And we need that in order to get the growth policy that will help us guide us through this. And not to mention the wetlands and the wildlife corridor that we are facing. This is going to be a battle royal. And all that has to happen tonight, frankly, please consider it. For our downtown owners are just about ready to break. And they're going to have, like I had, an additional $10,000 tax bill that they're going to face for the next 5 years. We can't carry that burden right now, and we will carry it. And we will carry it for a mega national corporation like Goldman Sachs, and I don't think it's fair. Please consider, just no tonight, just no tonight.
Thank you,
That's
Patty.
all I ask you.
First of all, I don't know if I got a right to talk to Rankin County. Who has that site every day.
Would you say your name and
Mark
address?
Smith, Red Creek Road. I pretty much agree with the first two speakers. As far as an overlay, if there is someone that's really pushing this, that's got a lot of money, just make them come up with a plan, or more than one plan. Let them spend their money, and let us approve it or disapprove. If they want it that bad, then they should be able to come up with something, and we don't need a master's degree to judge it. Sit down some thought, reasonable people can look at it and say, this makes sense, or it doesn't. Or get them to say, well, you need to go back and come back and look at the plan, tweak it here and there. So that would be my suggestion. I've got a question. I didn't realize that gas stations in the county. Is that correct? I think the city limit sign is the other side of it. Wait, just curious. Not that that's important. It looks like to me, highway commercial, it seems to me, I don't think of residential when I think of highway commercial. Myself. When I think of highway commercial, I think gas stations and restaurants and stuff like that. So I'm a little confused on that. But it is what it is. Anyway,
Thank you, Mark.
One other thing from Livingston is a unique town. We love it. You always got tensions about growth versus tradition. I'm at an age where I don't want to see anything change. We get that way. But I realize that there are things going back and forth. But that is the entrance to this town. And one person had a good point about, taking away from downtown. I'm from the south, and all these small towns there are just further along. Even smaller towns. So that's something I think we need to do. I would encourage you not to do at this point. I can come back with a plan, with an overlay, all of that.
My name is Joan Pressage, 410 South 6th Street. I would urge a no vote right now. I don't think there's been enough time for the community to really absorb this and think it through carefully. And I think decisions that are made under time pressure are generally weaker ones. I can't see from where I stand any reason that a no vote would have lasting implications. So for that reason, I think it's important to consider voting no. And then the other reason I would urge a no vote is because I think that all decisions are better when they're made within a context And the city plan is up right now. I know people are wanting to look more carefully at the entire picture for how growth is going to happen. And it would be better if we made the decision about this particular parcel of land when we were looking at the updated growth policy. So for those two reasons, I would hope for a no vote tonight.
My name is Lucinda Reinhold, and I live at 194 Bridger Hollow Road, south of the Trace. So I'm from the county, but I consider Livingston to be my town. This is where I come to shop and enjoy the restaurants and just enjoy the specialness of Livingston. And I would concur with the last speaker. I do respect Green for Less as a very responsible and sensitive business member of our community. But I really think that the city should not allow any zoning change without an updated growth policy. And I have concerns also that there has not been a comprehensive public planning process. This particular zone change, which I think is concerns over 60 acres, if I'm not mistaken, really should be considered as part of an overall land use plan for the future. And that should incorporate the whole community's vision. I think we'll be sorry if we do zone changes like this piecemeal. So I also would urge a no vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucinda.
James Duncan, 4 Chesapeake Drive, in the county, representing the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I missed a few meetings, but it seems like what I'm gathering from this one is that the landowners brought up this request, which has to be answered with a yes or no. Am I correct in assuming that this was brought up by the landowners in part because there is a development plan that's been put forth? There's no developer involved, no plan put forth. No one has a plan doing with this rezone. Okay. So while representing the chamber, obviously we represent a lot of businesses here in this community, and while that would mean any new businesses that came in with this redevelopment and this rezoning, theoretically would be folks we would also have as members and represent them. One thing that's pretty obvious that a lot of folks here have already hit on is that when you start developing the property out there by the highways and you put your gas stations and restaurants out there, all of which could be future members, a lot of those establishments, gas stations, restaurants don't usually tend to be local individuals. Those are usually owned by out-of-state people, corporations, folks, a lot of funds to build on these highways, and that money oftentimes gets shipped out while people who do own businesses, restaurants, gas stations, and hotels here in our community that we're already representing are going to start to feel the burn from this. Like a lot of folks have said, you drive by these big empty spaces in the west, and you hit that exit, you get off the gas station, you get your gas, you get your food, maybe. Not a lot of reason to go into a downtown area. So it's one of the things that makes our community unique. And in real estate, as the jacket says, I mean, we all can stand to benefit from growth of real estate and buying and sell property. So while there could be a potential money involved for additional growth like this, if it comes at a cost of changing the way our community is currently set up, this small, wonderful community with this great downtown, it's really not worth it. You know, we relocated across the country to this community specifically while turning away from Bozeman and Billings because of the uniqueness of this growth. So growth for the sake of growth isn't always a great thing. Too many communities fall victim to urban sprawl in the downtown. Every downtown right up today. There's no businesses whatsoever that take up in the downtown area. They all go to the highway where the big box stores are, and there's no community left. Everyone leaves. So as far as this goes, I would also implore on this a no vote until we have a better idea of what can be coming in. If there's a development plan, something a bit more organized other than making this change now, without a real big plan in place. Let's try to keep what we have now and plan a little better going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
So I just want to clarify for everybody, a no vote does not stop a hotel, a restaurant, a business, and things that you've been talking to be concerned about. This zone change does not allow those things. Those things are already allowed. What a no vote does is stop housing. So I just want to make sure that was clear to everyone. All the businesses can still be built currently on the land as it is with no approval process except the subdivision approval process. What a no vote does is stop housing. So as long as everyone's clear on that.
Allows gas stations.
Any other public comment?
Emma Lewis. My name is Emma Lewis Thomas. I own a building on Main Street. And I also live out on Frontage Road near Orea Creek. I was involved once in another state in providing housing that was near where people worked. I can tell you it was a huge mistake because people don't want to work and then walk across the street and go to their houses. They want to go in town where there are people. They want to see other people. And that housing project was a huge failure. I tried my best to make it not happen. We spent $1 million on that. This is many years ago. And when I heard that housing was one of the things you wanted to do, I thought, well, I must at least share my experience. People don't want to work 9 to 5 and then walk across the street and go home, or even be able to go to a store and then go home. They want to go into town. They want to see other people. They want to have more experiences. So if housing is part of this, my main objection or thing I want to discuss is I think that's not a good idea. I have not had a good experience with that in another state. And I spent a lot of time on that project because it did go through over my objections and it ended up costing a lot of money and it was never recovered.
Emma.
It's Emma Lewis.
Emma Lewis.
Thank you.
As you know, my name is Richard Smith. I live at 333 New Ventures Drive. And I'm going to speak more as a public person. And just so that you know, I also have property downtown, right downtown. I spent a lot of money redoing that facility and we have got it rented and it's become very, very successful. I truly believe by providing this zoning change, we can create an entrance to Livingston that, you know, people desire to get off because they see something real nice. Housing, whatever it might be, even a hotel or whatever, because that gets them off. And the difference between this access and all the other accesses is when you drive down it, it goes right into the center of town. Right now, a lot of people coming from the west get off on the 333 exit. And I've had people tell me, oh, I thought the McDonald's and the little development there was Livingston, and they head south. What we're trying to do is create a gateway community that enhances the desire for people to get off the highway there and then follow the road right into the center of town. I think there's been a few extreme comments already said here tonight. I've lived here in this area for 35 years. I've done a lot of building and development, and we have always tried to focus on enhancing the character that's already here. There was one comment about Goldman Sachs. Just so that you know, Goldman Sachs is nowhere close to being a majority owner of Printing for Less. And they would never allow that to happen. And Printing for Less is an employee-owned business. So there's a lot of employees that have stocks and ownership in Printing for Less. And nobody has ever said that Goldman Sachs is coming in and running anything. They're an equity partner for a small portion of the ownership of the property. The bottom line is praying for less truly cares about what this entrance looks like. I think they've demonstrated that for 12, 14 years. When we originally built that building, we cared about what it looked like because we care what we have, and we don't want people driving by to think, wow, why would you even get off there? But it looks great. And we care about how it evolves. And unlike some people, I have done residential developments close to where they work, and people love to be able to walk home. I, for one, have my office within walking distance of my house. And I love that because I don't have to get in the car and drive all the time. But when people are living there at that focus point, where are they going to go eat? They're going to go out to dinner in Livingston instead of them driving home to Bozeman or something and spending all their money over there. So I just want to really impress upon you it's not everybody that believes it's going to affect negatively the downtown. I think it's going to enhance it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Matthew Bradner, 612 North 11th Street. I think you should vote yes tonight. Housing is important for growing communities. I purchased my home here 3 years ago under the Rural Development Loan. And had that loan not existed, I would not be able to come here and start a career. I have a number of friends who've done the exact same thing because I have it so good. I live 7 minutes from where I work, and I agree that bringing business is important to downtown areas. And I think that having more housing will bring more people downtown. Downtown is a thriving area, and you have nothing to worry about in regards to the commerce there. Housing is extremely important because my friends have paid $1,000 a month for a studio apartment. So people need more options, and it needs to be fair, it needs to be affordable, and we need to welcome the people that are coming for the new jobs. So I think you should vote yes to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Nadia.
My name is Michelle Ibarraga, and I live at 711 Loch Leyden. I also work for the Park County Environmental Council, which is a downtown business. First, my comments are in no way a reflection on how I feel about PFLS. Livingston is very lucky to have PFL as a business. Not only have they added jobs, they have given us a business and a building sensitive to our environment and respectful of the people who work there and our community. Nonetheless, this is not about what PFL is proposing. This is about a zone change, and therefore I urge the commission to vote no. I have concerns for the planning process or lack of planning process that underlies this application and others. The city staff report states, the growth policy does not directly address planned locations for high commercial zones. The public should have an opportunity to determine appropriate locations for high commercial activity through a comprehensive public planning process. This has not happened. Our growth policy has not been appropriately updated since 2005. I know the city has heard me and others speak to this important matter, and I'm very grateful that I believe the city understands the urgency of updating this growth policy. It is my understanding that a zone change of this scale, 60 plus acres, should comport with a future land use map and future land use planning guide. This application does not, because Livingston's growth policy is out of date. The zone change application runs with the property, not a property owner. While we may agree with PFL's future plans, there is no guarantee they will own the property indefinitely. Highway commercial allows different uses that cause me some concern. A growth policy is the only appropriate means to establish a community vision for future growth. I really look forward to participating in that process, and I applaud the city and the planning board for recognizing the importance of updating our growth policy. How great would it be if we could all agree on a pause to allow for our community and our city to work together to secure the funding and the work on planning, design, and implementation of a comprehensive growth policy that will serve Livingston in a forward-thinking and thoughtful way. Our community is a treasure trove of bright, talented citizens who want to see Livingston be the best that it can be. I really deeply encourage the commission to provide opportunities for citizens to work together to tap the resources that we have here before we make decisions that have the potential to negatively impact our community. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
How's everybody today?
Good man.
My name is Manny Getz, 302 Old White Park Road. And I would just like to have a few comments in reference to the misinformation that I hear in the room today. First of all, as Richard said, and I sit on economic development, Goldman Sachs says no plans as far as development of property. They have an interest because one of the owners has an interest in the property. There's two other property owners who've been pillars of this community for over 30 years. And their names haven't been brought up, but they also own the property. Two is I hear how bad Target is and how bad Lowe's is and how bad Home Depot is. I think Bozeman's downtown is suffering. Have y'all seen that? It's suffering bad. I've been here for 30 years, and Bozeman was a lot better, worse shape 30 years ago than it is today. And the reason it is because they have these businesses that have attracted housing and so forth. And as one of the prior speakers said, that brings people downtown to shop. They can live out on the outside of the community and they come down to shop, and they come down to do this. So I think this is helping the community as far as that stuff goes. I mentioned at the last meeting that light industrial. Has anybody ever seen what light industrial property looks like? It's not very pretty. Basically, you can put a building up there, you can store tires, junk, everything around these buildings. And is that what we want for the entryway into Livingston? If we put housing in there, most housing communities keep their communities looking nice. Highway commercial, if you look at highway commercial buildings, they keep them looking nice. So I'd rather see something that looks nice coming into our community instead of a bunch of what I call light industrial, which is, Mike, I'm not sure what are the aspects they consider light industrial. Pardon?
You can't have auto and light industrial.
You can't.
You can only have tires and highway commercial.
Yeah.
Sorry, man, no auto.
That's right.
Well, they can store the stuff though outside the buildings. And that's my point. Is that that's what light industrial does. It stores stuff around their buildings, and it's not very attractive. So when I look at these things, I'm saying, what's best for the city of Livingston, and that's what I ask you to look at. Housing, we have a great community here, but who can afford to live here anymore? The demand has outperformed the supply that we can do. So we've now got rents that our young people can't afford, our old people can't afford. We got housing that's pushing, this year I'm told to be over 300,000 for the average house. So unless we have housing in the community where we can create that supply and diminish that demand, then those prices are going to come down. So, my position on it is I would, vote for pro decision on this thing because I think it's going to benefit the city of Livingston. And I said downtown Livingston will thrive with the business that's going to come in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Dennis Glick for 11 South Yellowstone. I just have a few comments on the staff report that I wanted to share. I know that the first public hearing, we spoke about the load test and whether or not this proposed zoning change complies with the load test. And in the staff report, it says, is the application consistent with goal 1 of the growth plan? And the staff report said, yes, the application is consistent. I would disagree with that. Goal 1 says strengthen Livingston's economy by supporting industries and initiatives that increase employment opportunities and personal income. Seems to me that the current zoning already does that. It's allowing Printing for Less to expand its industrial operation. They've already broken ground. As the city manager just mentioned, it allows for some other economic development activities. So I don't really see that a zoning change is going to increase those employment opportunities above and beyond what we already have. But to the contrary, if you look at the objectives under that, I think it undermines, the zoning change would undermine some of these objectives, like continue efforts to increase safe access and accommodate growth on the north side of the railroad, reassess the needs of anchor businesses to accommodate their long-term needs and retention, and explore options to enhance downtown district and support downtown businesses. Almost seems like this would undermine that. Another thing in the growth policy that I wanted to mention, and I think it goes, speaks to the concern that development at this far end of town would meet the needs of some people that otherwise would go downtown and patronize our businesses. And it actually says in the staff report, is there a need for the intended use of the property at this location? And the response is the proposed rezoning will facilitate greater service to the needs of tourists, recreationists, residents, and the general traveling public. And again, I thought that's what our existing businesses were trying to do. And when I think of that line, I think of Columbus, Montana. And I just like to ask all of you, when was the last time you were in downtown Columbus? And finally, in regards to the need for updating the road policy, on page 77, it says low test for zoning or rezoning. And it says, is the proposed rezoning design in accordance with the comprehensive plan? And this is kind of nitpicking, but we haven't had a comprehensive plan for over a decade. It's growth policy. And I think that just underscores how out of date our growth policy is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
So because you mentioned the staff report, I'll comment on the items you talked about in the staff report. I think you're drawing a false analogy between supporting existing businesses and future businesses. There's no reason you can't do both. This isn't an either or proposition. It can be and. Additionally, you actually hit one of the main reasons this would be in line with the growth policy, which is reassess the needs of anchor businesses to accommodate their long-term needs and retention. PFL is absolutely an anchor business to this community, and it seemed like you were saying they weren't because they weren't downtown.
No. I was saying that the current zoning allows them to expand their industrial operation.
Sure, but it says their needs, not their industrial needs, and this is their proposal. So they obviously think it's one of their needs. So that's absolutely one of the things that does support it. Develop tools to attract and retain economic development prospects. That's another thing that can be done in highway commercial is to attract different prospects. Address affordable housing needs. That's absolutely one of the goals of the growth policy is to address affordable housing needs. And I think when we talk about highway commercial, sometimes we get stuck on its housing, but more importantly, it's high density housing, or at least allows high density housing, which is very rare in Livingston. There are very few tracts of land in Livingston that allow even medium density housing, let alone high density housing. And the ones that are proposed are usually, I will say, they're usually campaigned against because they're in somebody's backyard. And nobody wants high density housing in their backyard. In this case, this isn't in anybody's backyard. This is one of the few places we can designate high-density housing that isn't next to an existing neighborhood, that doesn't change the character or the prospects of the current neighborhood, current residents. It's not blocking anybody's view. It is a new development that can be developed in this way. So I think that's why the staff looked at this as the current proposal was in line with the growth policy.
I didn't think there was a proposal. I think what you stated earlier was they just wanted a zoning change and
It's the proposal for a zoning change.
there's no development or plan. So you're speaking as if there is an actual plan.
No, I'm
So
speaking
maybe-
about uses available in highway commercial. This is only about the zone. So the proposal to change the zone is what we're talking about. Because there isn't a proposal for the development. So the only proposal on the table is to change the zone. So that's all we're talking about. But all of those changes need to address the growth plan, or growth policy, which is what we're talking about. I think those,
Or comprehensive plan.
sure, but what was the last comprehensive plan you were referring to?
It was a long time ago.
What was it?
What year?
No, what was it?
Oh, this refers to it as a comprehensive.
So, I think today's growth policy is as good as any Livingston has ever had. I don't think there's a date that we had a better growth policy. Now, I think everyone agrees that we would like to work on growth policy and would like to go forward. But when you're talking this kind of process, there currently isn't any funding for it. If we do get the funding, it may not even be done a year from now when Printing for Less would be available to come up. This is a long-term project. So we say, let's just wait till the growth policy is done. We don't have any idea when that is.
Right. I still think we need it.
I think everyone agrees we need it. The question is, do we just stop doing anything for multiple years until we have it? And I think that's the question that needs to be asked. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands the timeframes associated with the growth policy. Right now, there isn't one.
Well, that's a pretty strong statement.
It's desired.
There isn't one.
It's desired, it's just not funded.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good evening, Wyeth Wyndham, 128 South Ave. Just strolled over here. Born and raised in Bozeman, got the privilege of moving over here 12 years ago. Haven't regretted it since. It's been a great place to live with my family. I am here and because of one reason, PFL hired me out of college 16 years ago. And I got to come out here and do it. Now I have the privilege of being one of the senior executives of the company. And definitely, Livingston's got a quirk where I imagine most towns do, where you kind of have things running through it. A lot of real comes out of it. Goldman Sachs has no interest in a 60-acre development in Livingston, Montana. They have an interest in a fast-growing technology company that employs 300 people in Livingston, Montana. And that's what their minority stake is. That's what this is about. It's about continuing the 80-plus hires that we've already hired this last year, putting the company in the right position to make the decisions that it needs to. And if you've got any questions about the support of the downtown community, you probably haven't seen bonus at the end of the quarter down at the Murray, the Mint, the Alley, or anywhere else where I happen to be having a great time with my family and enjoying dinner. And we spend more money downtown than anybody else, and I'd love to see that matched anytime you want to. So this is about jobs and the lifeblood in this community. We talk about tourists coming out. That's transient dollars. I appreciate it. That doesn't build a town, doesn't build a community. PFL, companies like it do. Providing housing for my employees does. That's where we're at today. I've got employees. Nadia was so nice to come up and speak. She closed the contract today, so congratulations, Nadia, well done. Got employees like Nadia who want to live here, be a part of this community. It's difficult right now. It's getting harder. I can't believe I moved away for 10 months to help PFL with an expansion project. Came back, I can't believe where we're at today and what's happened even in 10 short months. And I've got a real burden to be able to hire guys in who can come in and cut paper, run printing press, and still have a good job. That's why Andrew Field started this company. His friends need a job. That's why we're here. That's why we haven't sold this company. That's why the employees own 20% of the company, and we continue to own the large majority of the company. This company's not going anywhere, and we're going to be stewards of it for a long time. And we're going to be stewards of the community. And this just provides us a little bit more flexibility. That's what we're asking for, is the opportunity for us to provide flexibility for our business in the surrounding area. The reason why we don't own the whole 60 acres, the bank wouldn't give us the money because we didn't have it back in the day. So some nice people were nice enough in the community to help us out with that. We'd like to return that favor and support their proposal today. So I appreciate the commissioners, and I actually appreciate what's coming. It's great to see that we don't really actually have a division on the subject. Everybody's about growing our town well and doing it in a great way. And I do really appreciate that, and it's nice to see everybody come out and talk about it a little bit. I'd encourage you to vote yes. Will this be the end of all things for us? Of course it won't be. Does it help us? Absolutely it does. We appreciate the commission's support over the years, and we'll continue to do our part, support the community, hire some great people, and keep doing it as best as we can. And you know, there was some dark years. 2008, we got close. We almost didn't make it. We came out of it. And I'm proud to say that now we're such a prosperous business that people are interested in being part of it, both financially and employment-wise. So again, thank you much. I really appreciate it. And please vote yes for us. Just make it a little easier for us. That's all we ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Wade.
Oh, I gotta sign it. Can't forget that.
Any other public comment?
I'll just take a minute, can I double dip?
You
Only
didn't
if it's
use
ice
up
cream.
your last time, so yes.
Mark Smith. Very quick. I agree with them too. My only point is that they could come up with a general plan of what they plan to do with this. Rather than us just taking both approve this. It's not unreasonable to have them with their resources come and give us 1 or 2, 3 plans if this is what they would like to do. And then vote on it. Basically, they'd be doing the work for us, as far as, planning. And we'll just say yea or nay and work on some details, but I'm sure it'd be something really nice. And the unknown is scary. But if you have something they're committed to as far as the general use of the land, then it would be much easier to approve it. But if you approve this now, you have no control. Thanks.
So Mark, can I tell you the process real quick on that?
Yeah.
That is exactly what will happen when they actually have a proposal. Right now, this is just a zone change. Even if they gave us a couple of plans for it, once the zone is changed, they don't have to stick to those plans. They're gonna give us a plan in accordance with whatever the zone is.
Well, there are such things as PUDs. This would be a big PUD.
Yeah, sure, but that's a subdivision issue. So that will come if that's what they want to do. That's absolutely what they'll have to present to us before anything can be built. So it's just a different part of the process.
Would it be piecemeal? Would they say, we want to do this with this acreage and not tell you about the rest of it?
It depends on how they break it out.
Yeah, so they could do it a little at a time here and then say, okay, a year later, say, want to do this.
But we
And
can't
we get there,
require
they're
them,
accountable.
we can't require them to do the whole thing at one time.
Well, maybe if you get them, say, we're going to vote no unless you do it.
Well, that's called extortion.
It's not extortion.
That's exactly.
No, this is a public.
That's what you said.
No, because it's not a public property. It's a
Well, no, it's
private.
not public property, but this is a city decision.
The rezoning is, yes, but we can't tell them what they can build in their rezoning.
What would you suggest?
In fact, that's exactly how the Lowe's test came about, was the city did that and they got sued and they lost. And then it got put in state law. So that is why we can't do that.
Thanks again, Mark.
I can use all my time.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I have never heard of voting on something that is completely unknown. I mean, a builder, if they want to build something, they bring plans to you. And you know exactly, and you don't vote yes before they bring them. They've got the money, we don't. And as far as having a comprehensive plan, it doesn't need money. We don't need to wait. We can do it. We have a lot of volunteers in this community who can get together and develop a comprehensive plan. But no way I have seen this happen over and over and over again with this city commission to vote yes on something and you don't even know what you're voting for. I never heard of such a thing. And it's not extortion. When I buy something or I allow something or I change something, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Thank you, Nancy.
Church Planet 229 South Livingston. I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight. I just wanted to say that I've listened to both sides and I don't envy your position. The only thing I would like to say is that the main point that they're missing is they can already put a restaurant there. They could already put these things there. Again, they're just talking about housing. And as far as concern about downtown, downtown is the most precious thing you got, I agree. And downtown for me and my friends, even in other states, is the place we seek out. We don't look for big shopping malls or Target or that. We look for the smallest town we can have that has the biggest downtown because it's entertainment. That's what people want, and that's what this downtown is. It's bars, it's restaurants, it's theaters, it's art, it's entertainment, and those are the businesses that survive down there. It's unique shops that you can't get in Target. If you need a loaf of bread, if you need dog food, you're not gonna go downtown. That's not the place for it. You're gonna go to the outlets and that. That's not taken away from your downtown. As long as downtown stays an entertainment area, when people want to go and play, it will thrive. And you just need to keep it that way, bringing in new things that are entertaining. Game night, bingo, all these tournaments that bring the people downtown right here, that's what keeps your downtown alive. And that's what we need to continue with.
Okay, last call. So I'm going to close it to public comment at this time. I'm going to open it to the commissioners. We have questions, first of all, for the city manager. Sarah?
The approval process, if, for regardless if there's a zoning change or not, that development wants to go out there, and we talk about the approval process. What exactly, I mean, as long as they come with a proposal for a permit that falls within the guidelines, we really can't deny it, can we?
If they meet the requirements of the zone and the building codes,
Right.
and it meets, well, and the infrastructure is there. I mean, we have denied ones based on not having infrastructure for it.
Sure.
We'll have to provide that infrastructure sooner or later because it's our job. But no, if it's within the confines of the actual zone and it meets the building standards, then yeah, we should approve it.
So I just want to make clear that it's not as if just because we don't like the idea, we can deny it, regardless of the zoning. You know, so people think, oh, we have this second option to relook at something. We really don't, as long as it falls within what's designated can be built in that area. I guess I would just like to look at the history of the zoning, when that was county and then it was annexed. That parcel that's highway commercial, I don't know the history of when that was annexed either, but it was residential because it was a trailer park when I was a kid. And so with that being there, when this was annexed, the commission had the opportunity to look at highway commercial or light industrial, and they chose light industrial for a reason. I feel the housing, which is one of the big components, and people here keep talking about we need the housing, and I think it's just important to be clear that there's no guarantee housing will come with the zoning change, none whatsoever. And the other thing to take into account is just because it's housing, built as housing, doesn't mean it will remain as housing. I continue to bring up the Airbnb and the vacation rentals in our community and the lack of oversight on those and codes and policies that is taking away our housing. Even if they were to put housing out there, there's nothing stopping outside investors to come in and buy that housing and turn it into vacation rentals. Which, if you think that's not happening right now, you're not aware of what's going on in our community. People are even building in our community for the sake of renting it out as a vacation rental. Those are the issues that are taking our housing away. If we were to look at that issue, I think it would really help our housing currently. I agree, we don't have a comprehensive growth policy. I appreciate and am very happy that we have implemented a strategic plan. I think that's a step in the right direction, and we discussed how our growth policy would be designed based on our strategic plan. So I see really no need for a zoning change at this moment. There are current expansion retail opportunities that are available with the current light industrial. Again, just because we deny a zoning request this evening because we want to have a better in-depth growth policy, doesn't mean that once that is completed, current property owners can come in and make the same request later. It was stated to us by the developer last meeting that they have no plans to do anything for 5 to 10 years. So again, I question why the need to do the zoning change so quickly. If that's truly 5 to 10 years down the road, it gives us an opportunity to implement a more cohesive growth policy to have a plan for these type of requests. Some of the issues I do have concerns with the highway commercial zoning change is there is no guarantee who will own that property. Michelle, I believe, made the comment, the zoning goes with the property, not the current owner. The changes with the highway commercial that concern me are housing. I don't think that that is a great area for housing development. I do not like the idea that RV parks would be allowed in a highway commercial zone. I do not think that's a great place for an RV park either, as are gas stations. All three of those will contribute to much more traffic than other retail businesses, which again, my concern with the safety on Highway 10, I want to see the mitigation of the traffic out there for safety reasons till we have a plan. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, again, these have no bearing on the current owners of the property of printing for less. But again, there's no guarantee and no proposal of who will actually develop this property and into what. I can tell you from my days of investment banking that investment banks, such as Goldman Sachs, that come in and make an equity investment and not a debt investment, are not going to be a silent partner. I have no idea, because it's private information, what the potential or ideas for that property are, but Goldman Sachs doesn't come in to be a silent partner in rural Montana. I have heard from the developer that they really care about having a gateway to Livingston that matches the historic district or matches the spirit of the community, and they really want it to look nice. And they've said that at 2 meetings, but yet they have no proposal. They have no idea. They have some speculation and schematics that they put together to provide to us. Very rudimentary, and again, with no guarantees. I personally will base my decision on facts, not speculation, and looking through the future and not for today. And the responsible thing for us to do would be to not allow a zoning change based on speculation and to develop a comprehensive growth policy that will guide us in these decisions in the future of Livingston. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other commissioners?
Yes. There's an ingredient here. Do you remember printing first started about 3 blocks from your apartments coming down that same street? That's where they started. They went from there and they built a major building. The owner of that company likes Livingston also, and which we're very fortunate, and he loves Montana. And they built a large building, and it's been a very successful business. And he's in a niche that there are very few people doing the same kind of business he is. Now he's building another building, because there's going to be 150, maybe more people coming into town. This is all good. I'm trying to figure the negative here. Now, I've been here 20 years. When I ride out Route 10,
truck stop. And there's a lot of stuff on the hillside that people have parked there, not very attractive. And I think we have to have a certain amount of trust here that, from what I can see, that you're growing. All this is good news. I don't know where downtown comes into what Bernie Phillips is doing right now. People are not going to be in a guardhouse and let them out to go downtown. This is a natural flow, and this is all future great stuff. So this is what confuses me a little bit. We heard things that they plan on doing. But the thing is, it's a business that's really important to Livingston. And I agree with, you said, downtown is going to be used by these people. Is it easier to go from downtown and Livingston when they live right out near Greenwich for less than it is to go from there to Bozeman every day? So I see this is all good stuff. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I talked to Andrew a few times, he's dedicated to this area. And he's done a great job. We should be thankful that we've got this kind of situation going. So I see it as a plus plus. Do we know what the whole thing is all about? No. But I know it's there right now, and I think whatever is going to be there is going to be a heck of a lot better as far as the whole area goes. And I consider Livingston, everything's 5 minutes away. I understand your remark. Whenever I go somewhere, people say about Livingston, and I grew up in a big city. Everything's 5 minutes away. So that's where it is. But I think this is a plus plus for the community. I really do. How do you?
Thank you, Mel.
I'll go. What Dennis Glick said, yes, I have been through Columbus. But if I'm going somewhere else that's not my destination, I will pull off and get gas and not go through the town. We already have that drive off occurring at exit 333. I believe when I first came out here to look for a house without my family, I was happy there was no McDonald's here. By the time we did move out here, sure enough, exit 333 had a McDonald's. And it now has truck stop, 3 gas stations, 3 fast food restaurants, and a grocery store. I look at downtown as a destination, and is there a way that we can attract people to come downtown? Yeah, I want them to come through and take a peek, but if they get off and get gas. So, as far as, gas stations coming in at exit 330, we're already doing at 333. I'm a big proponent of affordable housing. Not saying that this would be affordable housing, but we have a lack of inventory. And one thing my grandfather taught me, the closer you can be to your place of business or work, the better off you are. When I first moved here, I commuted to Bozeman for the first 5 years. When I finally was able to start my business over here, I was delighted. I wanted to be over here. I go out of my way to shop downtown. I love the businesses down there. I think I don't see a detriment to the downtown by changing the zoning to allow residential. One thing I wanted to know, can our overlay be added after the fact? Or, yeah, I know.
But we do have one. It just isn't applied to that.
Applied to that because of
It's not applied in.
Correct, it's not applied to anything,
Right.
but it exists. So yes, it would just be a zoning change.
Yeah, but can that overlay be changed? I mean, can we work on that too?
If we can do, that is just a part of our ordinances, so
Right.
if we want to change the standards within the design standard area, we certainly can do that. And then if for existing areas, you'd have to do a zone change, just like this process we're currently going through. if we were to put it on new property that's annexed, we could do that when it's annexed into the city.
Okay, thanks. And then the other thing is we already have a good sized parcel that Sarah pointed out, I forgot what it was, a mobile home park, which is now zoned highway commercial. So whether we like it or not, gas stations or residential can go in that area as well. I like the aspect of, designating high density housing and being able to have a place to put that, where there again, it's not in someone's backyard. One other thing, downtown Bozeman thrives because that city commission, they enacted very aggressive impact fees to help the downtown when Walmart came in and stuff like that, to help, save the businesses downtown and stuff like that. So there's things we can do there. From that, I yield.
Thank you, Clinton. Warren?
At first glance, I thought it was a real no-brainer because of the nature of Burning for Less, their history and their leadership, and their direction as far as current technology. And then when I learned that the only thing that was really going to change was the possibility of housing and gas stations, and they could do everything else now. That even reinforced that. But then the other part of my brain went to what Sarah mentioned, that we're looking at it as being developed and guided by Printing for Less. And that's not the case at all. The case is that whoever the developer is going to be doing all the guiding. Now, up to now, and I believe it will continue, the nature of how things have been built out there is spectacular. And I can't imagine, again, if Printing for Less has any word or anything to do with it, they're not going to foul their own nest. I can't see that happening at all. But there is a lot of indefinite possibilities. Goldman Sachs or anyone of that nature certainly is looking strictly for the highest return. And again, going back to the positive side, 3 years ago, the median price for a house in Livingston was $150,000, and right now I believe it's $265,000. So the problem isn't creating jobs. The problem is holding the people or letting the people who want the jobs live here. And that's more of a problem than unemployment. And from the looks of things, it's just going to keep getting worse. So it's not 100% either way, but nothing is guaranteed. That's also a bottom line. Nothing is guaranteed. So I think that balancing it all out, I believe the possible possibility of housing and the lack of any other downside other than a gas station is outweighed by the positives, far outweighed by the positives. So on the one hand, it's not a no-brainer, but it is definitely worth a yes.
Thank you, Warren. I have some questions to start to make sure I have these clarified so I can make my decision. So I need clarification. So we can't base legally, Jay, maybe this is your question, this decision on what we'd like to see in the planning document in the future. that correct?
It's so, because we have a legally sufficient growth policy as far as the state is concerned, that is our growth policy. And that is a document we have to use to make a decision.
And so this request fulfilled the growth policy that we have.
Both the city staff as well as the zoning commission believe that it did meet the goals and objectives of current growth policy.
Okay, second question, thank you. As far as this property is concerned, is it possible for, or any property, so there's 60 acres or so, could they have chosen to just ask for a zone change on a part of it?
They could have, that's actually frowned upon by the zoning commission because we don't want piecemeal zoning. So it's better to have it zoned consistently across the entire property in this case.
So they could have, but not necessarily been passed by the zoning commission to ask for the residential section. So that to be rezoned from industrial to.
And a lot of it depends on their plans on whether or not the residential cross current property lines. If they reconfigure some of the property lines, again, the zoning isn't going to change with the property line, so they probably want consistent zoning across all of the current property so that they can plan a development uniformly if the zoning was approved.
A couple statements of things I know about related to this issue. So I was on the planning board now as the commissioner. Warren is now the rep for the commission, and this issue was brought to the planning board about 1.5 years ago, initially. And so I know a lot of times people have felt like this is very quick, and the process has gone through quickly. It hasn't. They were asked at that time, when I was on the commission, or on the planning board as the rep, I, along with all of the people, requested that they come with a more concrete plan. It was very kind of vague. If you think this is vague, that one was really vague. So they came back to the planning board recently, the past 4 months or so, with more of a plan and a bigger request. And the planning board or the zoning commission had multiple meetings. There was 3 that I know of. I don't think I missed, I think there were 3, where this room was packed. We never get that many people at commission meetings. And they discussed this at length, this issue. And someone brought up that Vicki Blakeman, who had been on the commission before, she's now on the zoning board, and she voted yes for this because it was a unanimous decision. Just wanted to point that out. So she went from a commissioner just to being on the zoning commission and voting yes for this. Where I'm having a hard time with this issue is I'm trying to reconcile the residential aspect with my wish for what that whole property could look like. I have a hard time with that. I know as a commissioner, all of us have heard me. I personally would say this. I think the 3 of us that have been on the longest would say it and have said it, that we hear more than anything else for the past 4 years, in particular 3, we need housing. We need housing. How are we going to do it? We have it brought to us multiple different ways. We've had, requests for higher density over by the soccer fields, and the community came out en masse and rejected it. They were upset, and that was what Mr. Carty referred to, and like not in my backyard. So this is a residential, has residential potential, and no, we don't have an absolute request at this time or a plan, but they don't have to. this is the main, or the first step to their future plan. And am I right in saying that they don't have to have a plan ever? They can come with a request based on something very big, correct? So I am having a hard time with this, for sure. But I also want residential housing. I want affordable housing for people. And it's been frustrating to watch. I bought a house during this crazy market. It was nuts. And so, let me see, I want to make sure I've covered, I was writing notes from all, thank you for your feedback, community. A lot of very concerned people and great ideas. And so I was trying to write down my thoughts as you guys were talking. Make sure I covered everything. All right, so at this point, any other comments or commission comments that anyone would like to say? I do want one last statement on, if I felt strongly that the light industrial was better than highway commercial over residential, or with residential potential, I think this would be an easy decision, but I don't think our light industrial requirements are that great. I would have wished for that to be a better planned zoning area, but at this time, that's not what we have. And like I said, I'm still, this is a tough decision because I see all of what everyone is saying. It's very valid, very important, and very concerning. But we can't base it on a future wish or a future planning document. We can't even do it. The state would frown upon that as well. And legally, we are obligated to base it on what we have. So I'm done. I want to make sure all the other commissioners
Just one more thing, anything that potentially does get built out there has to go through planning anyway, and it has to be approved, so it's not like, and anybody can do whatever they want their building wise. I mean, they do have to come before us and to approve it.
Well, yeah, but you can't deny it if it doesn't, as we already discussed, if it already follows our current building.
Right,
Please
no, I
stay
mean,
in the
that-
microphone, we can't hear you, Matthew.
I was just making the point that we had discussed earlier that you can't, even though it does have to come before the commission, you can't deny their building if they're meeting all of our requirements.
Correct.
You can't deny it because you don't like the idea.
No, I guess that's not quite what I was saying, but we will get to look at what does go out there.
Any last comments? So do we have a motion from the commission
Yeah.
on ordinance number 2071?
I make a motion we pass ordinance number 2071. I'll second.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Maybe. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
For.
Commissioner Friedman,
For.
Commissioner Sanford,
Against.
Commissioner Maybe.
For.
Motion passes. Thank you, community. Next on our agenda is ordinance number 2070, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending ordinance 1999 and ordinance 2049, chapter 9, article 4, of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Parking, Stopping, and Standing by adding an additional loading zone on the east side of L Street at the intersection of L and Park. Mr. Cardew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This ordinance is a second reading. We talked about this both in, as an action item and in the first reading. This is the loading zone for the veterinary clinic on by Jeff Dickerson. There's no new information on this. It's just a second reading and will become effective 30 days if passed.
So I'm gonna open it to the public. And I forgot to gavel earlier. I'm supposed to open the public hearing with a gavel. And at this time, if you have any concerns or questions regarding ordinance number 2070, please step to the podium. This public hearing is closed. Commission, do you have any questions or comments on ordinance number 2070? Do I have a motion from the commission?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2070. Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Friedman,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg,
4.
Commissioner Levy,
4.
Motion passes. Our next public hearing is zoning commission recommendation for approval of tailored request for zone change for a 0.75 acre parcel of government lot 3 as referenced on plat 104 located at 1311 East Gallatin Street to be rezoned from medium density residential mobile home R to MH to high density residential R3. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this will be the public hearing. The ordinance appears in the ordinance section. So this is another zoning request that has come through the zoning commission. Again, it was recommended for approval by the zoning commission. It is a lot, you can see it on the screens. It's kind of a triangular shape right there. For a little bit of reference, if you go further down the left, that'd be Cave Vanell Park there. I don't know what that is. So that's Gallatin Street.
Yeah.
So that would be where that is. So that is just a 3/4 of an acre section right there. You can see it's surrounded by mobile home on the north and the east. To the west and northwest there is multifamily housing. So that's already R3 for multifamily housing. So it's basically a small parcel that's completely surrounded by high density housing at this time. And they also are requesting a change to medium density residential mobile home, so R2 MH, to high density residential R3. So they're already zoned for the mobile home park. They would like to be zoned according to the kind of multifamily dwellings there to the northwest. Can you pull up the zoning map again and we kind of show how it's surrounded?
Can I ask a procedural question?
Sure.
So what, we're looking at this, but then we have the ordinance. So what are the expected actions of the commission on each agenda item?
So this is just the public hearing, so this will be the opportunity for the public to come up and speak on it. And then you'll vote whether or not to proceed to the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
So this will come to us as a second reading of the ordinance at a future date. So,
Yeah, we'll get it over there in a second.
do you want me to open it to public comment? All right. So we open this public hearing for public comments on the zoning commission's recommendation for approval of a zoning change from R to MH to R3. Any public comment?
Street. So talking this little piece right here in the corner.
Right. And then the triangle, purple triangle is Katie Bunnell Park.
Yes, that's Katie Vanell Park. So this is the green is the R2 MH, so that's the mobile home.
Right.
The yellow is the R3, where it's already high density house. It's also right there for you.
JT for 225 South Main, in the green section out there, is there any sort of designation as far as like, if they were thinking of homes, I mean, like how many lots there would be? You know, like, it's hard to sort of, when you're just looking at a piece of property and you just give it a number or a name without a like square footage or like what kind of, what is the big piece of property we're talking about?
3/4 of an acre.
3/4 of an acre in like, how many possible lots could be developed on 3/4 of?
Because it's R3, it can be multifamily housing, so they could put like an apartment building on it if they wanted. So there'd be a lot of units, but they'd still have to meet the density requirements for R3, which is
15 is what I calculated.
15
Would
lots,
be possible, 15 units.
15 units.
Thank you.
Lisa, could you show the community the staff report on this? Page 63. So in the staff report, currently it is between it's a single family dwelling sandwiched between two larger family structures, just to help verify that. And then there's the two trailer courts that are on each side or one end and then above it.
We probably currently have two homes out of it already.
Any other public comments or questions? Yeah, Patricia.
It looks like this is implying that maybe this could become apartments. I mean, that's maybe the motivation of the person, but we don't know. They're just simply applying for something again.
No, their intent was to be multifamily, it says in the application.
Now, I started in urban design when I was 22. And I have a huge background in urban planning. And there are tools, because we do not have an urban planner with a master's degree in urban planning and someone with some kind of background in economics at all on the staff. I am asking this commission to hire people like this. Please consider this. There are tools in urban planning that this commission is not able to use. For example, planned unit development. Go ahead and make this change, but you aren't using a PUD, which is an amazing tool for you to set the requirements. This commission consistently says, we can't do this because they just have to come with us. No, you have urban planning tools that you can use as a commission and you're using none of them because you don't have people with the background to implement those for the city of Livingston. I just came from Whitefish. They had experts in urban planning who implemented PUDs for lots like this. And that should be an requirement. And my concern is that we have a city manager who's coming out with these, advocating for things that he wants. I understand that. And right now, under our growth policy, basically you have the city manager and the public works director, and they can come out with a zoning recommendation without a decent growth policy and without a comprehensive plan and without implementing any of these urban design tools. Because nobody on the staff knows about these urban design tools. Please fill in this terrible need as we grow for someone who really understands urban design. Please, this this is appropriate for a PUD. And then when we say we want a PUD and we go to this lot, we say, okay, here's what we're requiring. So we're asking for affordable housing in this lot. We're asking for certain parking regulations. We're asking for a lot of things. It's right built into urban design. And it's such a dearth right now of information for this commission. Please consider that. I mean, you could go ahead and piecemeal this, but the great communities in Montana have used great urban designers. And we deserve that.
Thank you, Patricia. Any other public comment? This public hearing is closed on the annexation request. Zoning request. At this time, should we wait until the ordinance to discuss, commissioners? It's more of a listening session. Are you okay with that? Okay. So next on our agenda is one ordinance. And it is ordinance number 2072, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 30.13 of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Official Zoning Map of the City of Livingston by rezoning a 0.75 acre parcel in Government Lot 3 as referenced on Plat 104 from medium density residential mobile home R2MH to high density residential R3. Anything else to add?
No, so that's the same piece of land. Really, I'm not sure there was much public comment in the zoning commission.
No, may I?
Please.
The planning board or zoning commission was normally send you an independent report from the staff report. There was only one person that spoke to this besides the applicant. They were not opposed. They were just pointing out their concern that high density housing has in the past become run down, and they were concerned about the upkeep of the neighborhood.
Thank you. So commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this zoning request? The zoning change? Nothing? No one has anything? Well, as far as that question, or the concern, I'm sorry, from the community member, I hope that we'll see a lot of changes in how we enforce our ordinances with our new ordinance officer. So I'm hoping, it's another major issue for our community. It's brought to us often. Anyone else? Do we have a motion on ordinance number 2072?
Will we accept ordinance number 2072?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Maybe and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against, for the same reasons as stated in the previous one.
Commissioner Maybe.
Motion passes. We have no resolutions tonight, and we have 3 action items. Our first action item is to discuss, a discussion regarding city parking ordinances. Mr. Hardees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this item is at the request of the commissioners. Provided in your packet was both the city code chapter that has all the parking ordinances in it, as well as an overview chart that just gives you the list of the entire codes. Specifically, you guys were speaking specifically about trailers. That is in section. 220? 237.
I wasn't even close.
There you go, 9-237, which is about halfway down the second page of the chart. So the current code is no parking a trailer, trailer house, or motor home on any street more than 5 consecutive days, and it has a $20 minimum fine.
Can I ask a question? So in reading those zones, because I think with this discussion that has been brought to our attention at commission meetings, and also I have heard from a lot of constituents in the community about concerns of trailers parked on streets. I see the other code, not licensed, demolished, partly dismantled, the one right above it, 236.
Mm-hmm.
Are we enforcing that one at all?
We are.
Same way? And I guess for that one then, so more than 72 hours. What happens if you run across something that falls in both? Do you ticket them twice?
I can.
Do
Yeah, occasionally. It depends. It depends on the number of infractions the individual has had prior. And then it's up to the court to decide how many they want to use.
And so, back to the whole thing, with the zoning discussion and everyone's subject opinion based on whether or not it follows a growth policy. When we look at our ordinances and you look at 236, it's pretty subjective.
Parts of it, obviously not licensed, dismantled, or partially dismantled, but
Pretty subjective.
well, not licensed is pretty objective.
Yes, it is. But dismantled and partially dismantled. I'm just trying to look at this, when we look at both of them. I mean, a lot of the problems with the trailers are, the trailer's got a flat tire, the boat's flat, half the boat's missing. So which ordinance does it really come into play? And I guess I'm thinking if we're gonna tackle this issue, we better make sure that we're looking at the big picture and not piecemealing one section, hoping that's gonna solve the issue.
Right, which is why we included the whole thing. But I would say 9-236 is limited to vehicles.
That is specifically vehicles.
That is specifically vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about if a vehicle connected to a trailer?
In general, and again, it is subjective, but in general, if the trailer is also dismantled or inoperable, we would ticket that. If there is something on the trailer that is inoperable, we don't consider that.
Right.
So if it's
that I can understand. I'm just trying to understand, then maybe my question should be, do we have anything for dismantled or partially dismantled trailers?
No, but we do enforce, we say a trailer, it has to be operable as well.
Okay. Even though our code doesn't state that.
Specifically, yes. They're welcome to take it to court.
It's considered a vehicle.
Yes. We interpret it as a vehicle.
Okay, so trailers were interpreted as a vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, so that would fall under 236.
Right, and not stuff on the trailer.
No, I wasn't implying stuff on the trailer, but I was, implying dismantled.
Yes, if it's a dismantled trailer, it falls under the same code.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So anyway, I just think we should keep that in mind when we're looking at this. Point being, a lot of the complaints I receive from people are the broken down trailers, broken down campers, those type of things parked in front of their home. So it's not, just recreational vehicles. So just want to keep that in mind.
And what we didn't highlight but was also discussed is 9-241, which is no parking on city streets for camping or remaining in the vehicle.
Thank you, that's another good one, yes.
So, Sarah?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, sorry, because I think a lot of the community members are thinking that we're specifically talking about boats, which is part of the issue. It's not all of the issue, so.
So
discussed.
Thank you for clarifying. This initially was brought to us through community complaints, and that they feel that the ordinance number 1 isn't being enforced. And secondly, that it's too lenient. So now, that doesn't mean tonight we are going to make a decision to allow parking of trailers for 100 days versus 5, or, or overnight, or not. Okay, so what we're doing is discussing this as an open conversation to understand what the want of the community is. And then we will then request from, or not, depending, from the city manager to bring it to us in another way. Okay. So can I open it to the public at this time, commissioners, or anything else, questions? Or
No, I think, sorry, I was just gonna say that, for me, it was, frustrations of people that the current 5 days was not being enforced. And so that, it wasn't as if, I think that's the crux of the whole issue was, we have a lot of ordinances, we don't enforce all of them, but this is one, can we enforce it or can we not? Do we want to have the city manager directive to enforce it or not? I think that's where the commission was coming from, as it states with the 5 consecutive days.
Thank you for the clarification.
One of the baseline questions, just that, was about enforcement. Yesterday, for the first time ever, I saw the street sweeper go down my street with a law officer right behind it writing tickets.
I got one.
Proof.
It was truly a test, and we passed. I waited 3 months for that ticket.
So, and I guess that is some information I have for you if you'd like. I have some basic statistics. We've just started, obviously, because we just got an officer. Some of the numbers for July. July was a short month because the street sweeper was broken, so it wasn't out as much as it normally would have been. But we handed out 61 street sweeper tickets in July. The code enforcement officer from the first week of July through the first 2 days of August has dealt with 39 parking complaints, 15 abandoned vehicles, 35 code enforcement actions, 7 animal complaints, 1 random complaint. We brought in $1,180 of revenue based on booting vehicles, which is something that's been in our code for a long time, but it's never actually been done before. Well, it hasn't been done in a long time. I don't know if it's ever been done. So we made 4 arrests based off of traffic or violations. We also found the stolen cars we talked about before. There was also 13 abandoned vehicles or trailers warned for removal, and we towed 3 of those.
Can I just seek clarification?
Sure.
I don't understand. So what constitutes that you're going to move a car?
So there's a whole section of code on that, but it is, you have to have 5 outstanding parking tickets, of which 1 has to be at least 30 days in arrears. You are then notified at your address that your vehicle is registered to, and you have 5 days, 10 days, something like that. Hold on, it's actually in here.
So it's a parking violation.
Yes, it must be sent to the registered owner 10 days prior to mobilization, so they have 10 days to come in and become current with their parking tickets. If they're not paid after the 10 days, the vehicle's booted, they then have 48 hours to come in and pay off their tickets and the fees associated with booting. If they don't do that within 48 hours, we then tow the vehicle and impound it.
And so it has to be somewhere like where there's a designated 2-hour parking. It can't just be sitting on a residential street then.
It can be, if the ticket for, if it's immobilized or any parking violation, if they have 5 unpaid parking violations and one of them is over 30 days old, then they can be moved.
Okay.
After the entire notification process.
And then the second to the last one, we were talking about the trailers. You said you hauled 3. What were the violations of the other ones?
Which other?
12 or 13?
The 13?
Yeah.
Those were all either vehicles or trailers that received tickets, warning tickets that they were going to be towed.
Okay, so they were just a warning ticket then?
Yeah, basically they said, hey, we have determined this is an immobile trailer or an abandoned vehicle. If it's not moved, and I'm not sure what the time frame is on that, it'll be towed.
Okay.
So 10 of those, obviously the owner decided they would move, and 3 of them were towed and impounded.
Okay, great, thank you.
Before I open it to public comment and questions, one thing in the past that we had discussed, ticketing cost of ticketing. So the $20 ticket, when we initially started ticketing, and I remember this being very heated, that people were very upset at the $20 and thinking that it should be lower. Because it wasn't, they didn't like the fact that we were ticketing for parking in particular, for too long downtown or other places. So I want to just state right at the beginning that I think our ticket price, or the cost of the tickets is too low. I think that if we made people pay more, they'd be more thoughtful, but $20 is like parking in Seattle for 2 hours. So I think it's sort of adding to our problem. But I want to hear from our community as well regarding this issue. I know we have gotten multiple emails on this issue, and we can refer to them after you. So please come on up for public comment.
My name is Dixie Bullock. I live at 606 South 10th Street. And I've been here complaining before. But this parking issue, I think, has really become serious. Number one, there are so many. There's drift boats. I understand they need a place to park. Perhaps as a business, it's a summer thing. But when we only have room for one vehicle to go up a street, if you have to pull over and stop because there isn't enough room for 2 vehicles to come down a street in the summer, and if you address it when there are vehicles, campers, other flatbeds parked in the winter like we had last year, you couldn't get up the streets with 2 vehicles. And they don't charge enough. If we have people who want to park their vehicles, parking for trailers is rarely ever free. Let them buy some kind of a ordinance or something for the ordinance. Let them buy for the city to charge $50 so they can buy a certificate or something for parking from May till, say, the end of September. Let them pay something for the use of parking on the street. They could be, it could be a service, either someone could check it, the amount charged could certainly hire a part-time individual to check these people who are abusing this. The other issue is the safety. I drive a very small vehicle on South 5th Street by the church. Many times there's an older truck with a camper, and I have almost been hit, side just smashed, because I can't see. It's a stop street. I have no way of seeing unless I pull up to see around it. People on the west side where the old hospital used to be, there are no stop signs. And my understanding is, I may be wrong, but my understanding is the person on the right has the right of way. We have a lot of people that they don't know left from right. So you're taking a chance. And if, in fact, you happen to pull out because you do have the right of way, you either get honked at, or you flipped off, or you can just see them hanging out their arm to really let you know that they wanted to go. I don't like dealing with this. So I have a little tracker. And if this can't be changed, my horn isn't working, and I have asked my the gentleman that works on my tractor, if he could please see about putting a horn from a big diesel truck, or perhaps off at the train, so that when I approach an intersection, I'll have a horn. I appreciate all the time you guys spend and the consideration, and I especially want to thank our new city manager for an issue that I had that took over a year for me to try and get taken care of. It took him 2 weeks to solve it. So I do appreciate your time, and I think it wouldn't hurt people if they have big vehicles, let them pay for it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just let you know, Dixie, the trailer and truck are still there on Fifth Street today, in front of the church.
Yes.
Hi, Gary Boone, 615 West Calendar. I work for the railroad. I travel. I have a camper. Usually 2 months at a time, that camper's gone. If I'm lucky enough to be here at home, it may be there 5 days. I try to be a good neighbor, move it. A lot of people, and I didn't hear, those 3 vehicles that were hauled, were they boats, were they campers, were they, you know, because that does make a difference according to your ordinance. I understand the drift boats up and down the streets, a lot of people use those for summertime employment. I don't know, I think the 5-day rule is very fair. I do agree that the fine should be higher. I think the city is taking a step in the right direction, painting the intersections yellow. Slowly working their way across town. That is going to make the intersections safer. In addition to forcing those vehicles further back from the intersection. I would ask that not to be changed at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Any other public comment? Please come on up.
Eric Lane, 612 North 11. I have a few things before we get started. Congratulations on your ticket. I'm glad to see that I was on Montana Street. I have seen the selective ticketing happen, where about every 3rd car will be ticketed. And I was kind of wondering if that had to do with connections within the city, if that was purposeful, or if that was just totally random. Clearly it's not. I assume you're fairly well connected here. So I'm glad to see.
Very well.
Okay, well maybe that's what it is.
If that was the case, it would be, I would like tickets so you could see my windshield.
I will say that the selective ticketing around here has been a little out of hand. I think personally. I haven't had a ticket, so thankfully, knock on wood. The other thing is we don't live in Seattle. I will say that, like, that's a totally invalid point that $20 is parking in Seattle. I didn't move to Seattle. You didn't move to Seattle. I think $20 is pretty sufficient. It's enough motivation as it piles up for people to move those things. But I do think our 5-day limit is enough. And, you know, as a former fishing guide, thinking about trying to park your drift boat after you get done with a long day with clients, they've been a total pain all day. You drop them off at the bar, and you have to take your drift boat across town, drop it off every day, leave it there with all your gear, or unload all of your gear in your truck, come back home, and then the next morning go get your drift boat again. So to me, that seems a little ridiculous. Because many of us have moved here because of the fishing. This is part of our town. I realize that doesn't apply to 40-foot RVs. Or maybe it does, either way. I feel like the spot directly in front of my house, I should be able to put a vehicle there, right? I should be able to park my drift boat there throughout the summer, right? I'm not parking it in front of my neighbor's house. I'm not parking it across the street. I'm parking it in my little spot. And if there are safety concerns, I appreciate that. But safety concerns need to be addressed with the city, right? They need longer curbs. You know, I live in a neighborhood up on the hill that we have that problem. I agree, but that's a safety issue. Not something that should be, you know, every single trailer has to move every single night. So I encourage the 5-day rule, and I do encourage more ticketing of the trailers that are still, just left there all summer long, plugged in, many of them. We've all seen it around town, where that trailer hasn't moved for weeks, months, years, kind of thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Any other public comment?
Tom Platt, 229 South Yellowstone. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, so you've heard it. Hazards, you already know it. Those big trailers on the corners, can't see around them. Electrical cords across the sidewalks, in the streets. Slide outs. I can't make this stuff up. The other night we were coming home from downtown, my wife and I, celebrating, doing whatever, drinking. Big motorhome, residential street. I'm talking about the big buses. Generator running on it. The next morning I wake up, I'll walk my cat. I do walk my cat. The generator's still running. I can't make this stuff up. They take up valuable parking spaces. You see that. I don't think anybody doubts that. Street sweeping, we pay for it, we don't get it. I'm glad she got ticketed. The trailer was on Yellowstone today, went right around it, no ticket. But overall, just detracting from the charm and beauty and historical look of the town. I mean, just think about it. What value at all does having trailers stored on streets? So that's what you gotta remember, stored on streets. 1 day, 5 days a year, I really don't care. Stored on a street. Cities across Montana, across the country, and even right here in Livingston, you can't store trailers on streets. Ridgeview Trails, can't store trailers on streets. That's a great community up there. People own trailers, don't store them on the street. Does not impact anybody's ability to do anything. But no hazards, great looking community. Northtown, I'm probably gonna get Bill's name wrong, but Mullenfeld, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Owner and developer of Northtown. Complete agreement, don't store trailers on the streets. That development won't happen. He communicated the same thing to Michael and the city planner. Complete agreement, don't store trailers on the streets. So there's it. What's storing trailer on the street? City growth policy. A lot of talk about that tonight. Goal number 2, objective number 3. Develop and enforce policies and procedures to preserve Livingston's historic quality. In your discussion, think, does storing a trailer on the street contribute to that policy at all? I would really like to hear if it does. So about the covenants in Northtown and Ridgeview. The local realtors websites, when they list a home for sale in Ridgeview Trail, I'll give you the specific wording. The subdivision includes covenants to maintain your investment. And for the most of us, our home is the single biggest investment we have. Those rules are in place to help protect that. So drive around town. I hear all these, oh, boats, trailers, campers. I'm glad they've been ticketed and some towed. It amazed me how flagrant it must be because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, I think you said this last week, and it was told me by Officer Hughes, if that wheel moves, they're not in violation. So just remember that. The wheel has to move. That trailer could be there forever. It never has to move other than turning that wheel. So that's what you have to come up with, is something that's enforceable at little or no cost to the taxpayer. Because that ordinance, it accomplishes nothing how the city has chosen to enforce it. Nothing. That trailer is going to be stored on the street forever. Unless the homeowner says, you know what, I'm going to be courteous, I'll get it off the street. Thank you.
Come on up.
Patricia Grable, 204 East Governor. My understanding is that there were as many as 59 vehicles. Is that correct?
That was just like 20 some odd blocks.
In about 20 some odd blocks. That's a lot of vehicles that people are putting in front of their houses. in violation of a city ordinance. And I couldn't agree more with you, Commissioner Hoagland, that we should have minimum of $100 fine. For if they have their trailer, fine. Because what they're trying to do is avoid storage costs. And we have businesses that will store their RV and charge a reasonable price, $30 a month or something like that. And then they can store them in and don't have to have them in front of their houses. That's a lot of vehicles that people are breaking the law with. And I saw a flyer that said, oh, well, our Montana lifestyle is being violated by ticketing these vehicles on the street. No, it's not. Our Montana lifestyle, we are law-abiding people. That's one of the main tenets of our Montana lifestyle. So, nothing wrong with these folks, instead of paying a $100 fine, finding a storage unit for their RV. I mean, that's what really has to happen. Speaking of selective ticketing, when my sister passed on, I had her RV I had driven over from Washington State. I had it parked on the street for 5 days and I got a ticket, of course. And in fact, the city, when they decided to ticket us during the construction, on Saturday, they only ticketed the cars around the Grego building. So I think they simply enjoy ticketing our establishment. But I certainly think that our fines are not nearly enough. It behooves them then, if they get a $100 fine, then to go find a storage unit for their vehicle and comply with the law. And it is not in the violation of our Montana lifestyle to break the law. Next.
Thank you, Patricia.
Misty Rooney, 515 North Beach. I wasn't even here to talk about the trailer parking, but I had an issue with a real eyesore Winnebago that appears in front of my house. Person doesn't live I don't know where this person lives. They park it, get out, walk across town. Every 5 or 6 days they come up and move it a foot. So there's nowhere for my guests to park when they come into my house because I have an eyesore of a Winnebago out there that doesn't belong to me or any of my neighbors. That would be my concern, is that if you choose to park that in your one parking spot in front of your house, it should be in front of your house. And so long as they come and move it a foot every 5 days, it doesn't help me at all because it was there all last summer. I would say if you had 2.5 months of last summer, it sat there. The only time it was moved was to move it the foot forward or backwards so that they didn't get ticketed or towed. I don't know if there's anything that be done about that, but that would be my one complaint with parking on the street. Is parking in front of, taking it across town and making it someone else's problem versus dealing with it at your own house.
Thank you, Misty.
Tom Pullman, 510 Livingston. I wasn't planning to say anything because I hope there'd be a lot of guys here. I get started in 1988 as a guy. And I just want to remind everybody that part of the culture of this town is in its being a fishing community. And it seems like we're talking about a couple different things, matters of degree. So are we talking about guide trailers that are parked on the street through the summer? Is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about 20 vehicles, which I've heard? So I'm not sure exactly what we're talking about, but I would say that, and I no longer park a boat on the street. There are lots of guides, lots of people in this community that don't own $500,000 house on a city block and don't have a place to store, and that's another cost. This isn't a rich community. I hear how quaint our downtown is, that's wonderful, it is, but those are working people as well. So let's just not forget about the impact you're putting on people and saying, oh, you can just go get a storage unit, you can add another cost. You know, these people aren't getting rich on the river, but it's part of our heritage. And I just wanted to hope that you guys would not forget that.
Thank you, Tom.
Beverly Iglesias from 220 South High Street. And I want to follow up with what Tom said, because I have 4 lots, 100 feet, and I happily give my neighbors space to park their trailers. It's not a problem. When the boats come out in the summer, it feels great. That's why we're here. 90% of us are not here because we make a lot of money here. We're here because of the lifestyle. And summer is short, and we have a good time, and we bring our stuff out and we play. And if somebody's got an RV in front because they've got guests in town, that's fine too. I think we're mixing issues here. We've got a boat issue or so-called issue where people like to have their recreational vehicles around while the short summer allows it. And then we have a long-term dead vehicle issue. And I think they need to be separated and dealt with differently. At this point, we are a community of people of real cross-section of income. And to be fining people $100 just out of some sort of punitive spirit is really disturbing. I think when you watch the winter time happen, and I have watched this, the boats and the rafts, they slowly deflate and they go someplace into people's garages. People care about those things. They're expensive and they're a big part of their lives, and they take care of them during the winter and they bring them out in the summer. There's not a lot sitting around on the streets in the winter. So I say give people more of a break in the summer so they can enjoy their recreation and the reason that we're here. And kind of lighten up this whole issue and get back to why we live here and deal with the real important, more invasive things that are happening on a case-by-case basis. But not just do some wide sweeping $100 fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Good evening. I'm John Roseberry, 315 West Clark Street. I'm a longtime listener, first time caller. Going on 2.5 hours now. I'll just like to reiterate what Heather just said very eloquently, is that, and everyone's bringing up good points, that there are safety issues, there are concerns about how our city appears, but there's also this fraction of the community that does enjoy being outdoors and responsibly uses their trailers and parks them on the street within the guidelines of the ordinance. And now that we have an officer who is dedicated to code enforcement, I hope that the code does get enforced properly and fairly. But I think anything that changes should not be at a detriment to our culture and our economy. One thing that hasn't been brought up tonight is people who use trailers for job sites, working to take equipment, supplies, to renovate houses, to perform landscaping, to do any sort of construction job that requires a trailer. That's an important segment of our economy, in addition to our fishing guides and visitors who come in and park a trailer for a night and while they're visiting friends or staying in a hotel. And just to reiterate what other people are saying, yeah, it's not acceptable to have trailers parked for extended periods of time on city streets where they cause problems that are a safety issue or an eyesore to the community. But I think trailers are important. We have a right to use them and park them on the street for a responsible and defined period of time. And I would ask that before any changes are made to the ordinance, that we give Officer Hughes an opportunity to enforce this code in a manner that is fitting with these different needs and different uses. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I feel you have to address the uncontrolled intersections. I have seen on the corners of the streets, you have campers, RVs, big trucks, and you can't see what is coming out. So you basically have to commit to the intersection on their, there's something going there. So, there's a safety issue there, and I think safety comes before, every, heritage, sportsmanship, there. I think just, being able to have some thing that you don't have to be riding your brakes every time you go on these intersections. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Michelle Braga, 711 Lockleven. Just want to quickly say that I do think you find a lot of concerned citizens if we amend the current ordinance to just 1 day. I agree that Livingston has a unique recreation culture and that the current ordinance, if enforced, is appropriate. Thank you, Michelle. You don't have to stand it a second time. Any other public comment?
Shared by 229 South Livingston. I think the point is that the 5-day one is not enforceable because as the previous people have said, if my career is a boat guide, with that law on the books, I can keep my boat on the road 365 days a year because they're moving it every day, or if they're not taking it out for a week, all they have to do is move their foot. I don't understand, as Don said, how these trailers did get ticketed because all they have to do is move their foot. Maybe they didn't know that, but people do know that, and people are abusing that by, as soon as they get a trailer tower mark, they just move their foot. Then they got 5 more days. They move their foot 5 more days. So it's fine, 5 days on the book, if you can figure out a way to enforce it. And you can't say, wait for somebody to violate it and then report it, because then you have to wait another 5 days. So you would have to report it as soon as you see it so they can start the counter. So you'll know when your 5 days is up. And we're not wanting to interfere with people's way of life. This is a beautiful town and it's beautiful scenery. We want to see the scenery. We don't want to see broken down vehicles parked everywhere. That's our only thing. And, you know, I understand in the summer months, you're more likely to have your vehicle out, but we have seen boats parked all winter long on the street. It's not just the summer thing. That's all.
Thank you, Sherry. Sorry. Any other public comment? Last call. All right, so I will close it to public comment and open it to commissioner comments, questions.
Well, having read the parking regs, it seems like, and this happened to me at one point, that anybody can park in front of your house at any time and leave their vehicle there. Just a vehicle or a car. And there seem to be 4 issues with the trailers, the boats. You got dead vehicles, you got parking in front of other people's houses, too long in place, and blocking intersections. So the intersection situation, which there's a lot of that problem, between the enforcement officer and yellow paint, that situation should be solved. Other people's house parking area, I don't know if there's legally any way to change that. You know, there's disabled permits or signs for someone who requires that. Is it possible to have your car registered or permitted and a light permit placed someplace at the curb or in the curb or wherever. The only reason they wound up towing the vehicle in front of my house was that it had an expired license plate. Dead vehicles should be obvious. And again, it's the enforcement aspect, which I think is really getting cranked up. And by the way, every vehicle, because I walked down the street just for ha-has, every vehicle that was not moved had a ticket on it yesterday. So those seem to be the three issues. And 3 out of the 4 can be remedied, I won't say easily, but just by diligence. The too long in place issue is something else. I don't know how that is solved. I don't know, limiting someone to one night. I don't have a trailer. I don't have any relatives that have a trailer. But if they show up from New Jersey and that's what they're living in or traveling in, if they stay in the house and it's parked outside, overnight seems awfully short.
Thank you, Warren.
Well,
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a lot of emails on this, and we are a different community. We have to recognize that. You know, 2 blocks from where you live, 3 blocks, we have a major river. And people want to kind of leave the ordinance the way it is. Now, when I moved here 20 years ago, I was faced with uncontrolled intersections. You know, guys are through streets, Clark's not. I mean, how the hell do you know this if you're dropped out from Mars somewhere? So we got a lot of these local rules. I am more disturbed, and I saw one, 7th Street now has a street light at Park. Wasn't there originally when we got here. And I'm winging down the street, 7th towards Park, and a block before there's a trailer on a corner, but I mean, he is on a corner, and there's no way in the world you could see what's going on. There's a lot of common sense to this, and a very difficult issue. Most of the comments that I have was to leave things alone, so we have to figure out a way to handle this. Now, we both live on South Yellowstone. If you cross the street going towards the park, there's been a car parked for 7 months in the same spot. He was on the other side of the street, and he was over there for 7 months, and he finally got a ticket and they threw it away. Next thing I know, he moves it to the other side of the street. It has not moved until he knew that the sweeper was coming. They moved it to the other side of the street. But it's been in the same spot in a very busy area where we want to keep the parking flowing. So we got a lot of these little, you know, I don't know, should we all be snitches maybe and take notes and call somebody? So it's a tough issue. But we are a different community, and I have to agree with it. How we accommodate all this? It's a good question. The uncontrolled intersections are probably my bigger concern, long run of driving. I mean, how do you know what to do? So, very complex problem. I wish there was a quick solution to this. But I think I did have to realize that most of the emails I had was that we do have a different mix here and a different way of life. And we can't deny that. So, tough issue. I yield.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I think the issue is, you know, we just wanted more enforcement on the current rule, knowing that there's, you know, we want to just stick to the facts. Some people, again, had some miscommunication that we don't like boats, but if you read the ordinance, it just happens to deal with trailers, and often boats are on trailers. But, so yeah, it's not just, about trying to take away, well, first of all, nobody on the commission made a recommendation to change it to 1 day, so I'm not sure where that information came from. But, it is a problem, we have the ordinance there. In anything you do, the majority of people do the right thing, they know right from wrong. But you have rules and ordinances for the 10 to 15% who don't know how to do the right thing. So to me, I'm looking at not just boats, I'm looking at trailers, motorhomes, I'm looking at everything that's under the ordinance. And I just would like to see it more enforced. And I know the difficulties of that and people who manipulate the system. But to me, just to stick with the topic at hand is how do we enforce the current code of 5 days? And I'm not an expert in city management or city planning, so I don't have the answer, but I'm sure this isn't a unique situation to communities across the country. But I have 2 situations right now across the street from me who probably have more frontage than I do. They have a couple lots. I have barely one. And they have a nice place to park their cars, and then they both have trailers with vehicles attached to them that they use somebody else's parking for. That's just not the right thing. And I realize you can't designate parking in front of a house to that house. I guess you could, but I'm not sure that makes sense. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out how can we enforce the current 5 day. Because I'm more concerned of the issues that I see more are trailers and motorhomes, not necessarily boats. And they're the ones that are out there year round. So, I don't know. I mean, I heard the cry out from the people in the river boats, and I get it. But I also have quite a constituency that communicate to me, and they're more concerned about trailers attached to vehicles abandoned in front of their house so they can't park in front of their own house. And that's a concern. I mean, if you come home every day from work and you can't park in front of your house because somebody has a truck and trailer parked there and they move it, 6 inches each day so they never get a ticket, I mean, that's not a solution. I don't know what to tell those people. And I think they deserve an answer. So that's where I'm coming from. Nope, thank you.
You seem like you're gonna say something, but
I just wish everybody could be a good neighbor. That's not always the case.
Bring back Mr.
Yeah. People need to watch Mr. Rogers. Solve a lot of problems. I struggle with this. What do we want the community to look like? I'm okay with the 5 day right now. We haven't really given our officer a chance to really start working on the really, chronic problems. We know who the chronic people are, users and stuff like that. And, there's grass growing in the gutter. Obviously these people are moving their vehicles for anything. I'm inclined to, I want to stay with 5 day and let's bear this out for a year and see if we can increase, the enforcement.
thank you. I think you guys all covered most of what I was going to say. I think it has to do with being a good neighbor. One example of what I have dealt with, so I moved from a house that's just off off of Park. Loved the neighborhood. I struggled with parking issues. I didn't have a driveway. I had one in the back. We parked our boat and our camper in the little spot, crammed them into the yard. It wasn't easy, but we did it. I knew that was the rule. But we also struggled with just people using those downtown streets really for long-term whatever. So I get it. I've been there, done it. I would go over to various restaurants, businesses and ask people and just say, hey, I know I can't ask you or make you do this, but would you consider not parking for 3 days right here? Because I had twin, like 3-year-olds, and I struggled to get them out of the car. And every time they accommodate me. So I tried to play the good neighbor and it did work. Then I moved to a house that has so much, I feel like I moved to a farm in the middle of town. And we can park, you can come park in our driveway, most of you, because I feel like the driveway is that big. And it's totally different. It's completely a different sense of what it's like. I live at a slightly different area of town, just less than a mile, but it's definitely different. But I know what the downtown people, the Yellowstone street people, that was my street. You know, Third, which a lot of the commissioners live in the downtown area, and we have struggled with. I feel as a commissioner, we have been talking about ordinance enforcement forever. We have wished for it, we have wanted it, and so I'm very thankful to Michael and to the commission for funding an ordinance officer and looking to improve the issue of ordinance enforcement. And I know, Sarah, you brought that up as well. So I feel like we need to find or continue, as the other commissioners have said, with seeing how it's going. Because I do see improvements. I see a lot more ticketing happening. Michael's been giving us the updates each month on some different changes in how tickets have been written and the income that the city now has a bit from it. As far as the long-term issue of, you know, the bad neighbor in a sense, or the person who doesn't care that their car is there for 7 months and they move it a foot, you know, unfortunately, they're just being jerks. They're not thinking about what it's like to have to deal with it. And I'm not sure what we do. One last issue that was brought up, like everyone said, we got a ton of feedback on this one. But there is that concern too, not just with the boats that it was usually referred to, or the campers that are for short tours moving, but also construction trailers and roll-offs. So I know I've witnessed people, so, you know, you don't have a driveway, where do you put the roll-off while you're doing, you know, tear apart? I saw that on Yellowstone quite a bit. You know, people parking their roll-off on the street because they didn't have anywhere to park it. And so we do struggle.
Permits for that though.
Yes.
Permits for mine.
Yep, for the roll-off, but then for like the trailers going with the, you know, with the roll-off, things like that. Let me clarify, I wasn't being very clear. But then, you know, your construction, the painter who takes 3 weeks, they park their trailer on the street and then leave it there because they're painting for 3 weeks on a property, for example. And they're not getting a permit to park that. So it might be something in the future I think we could think about, like how do we permit for long-term parking for those types of things? Is it a little cost to the contractor or to the painter or whatever to have a permit for that? Might be something. I still do think that we don't our ticket amount is too low. I still believe that. And I appreciate, you know, some of the comments made by the community that we don't want to over-ticket or overcharge either for the tickets. It's just that I think that it's too low at this time. And we, like I said, this is a long-term thing or long-time thing. We talked about this probably 4 or 5 years ago, or 4.5 years. I think I just came on the commission where people were concerned about the cost of the tickets. So I still think we do need to rethink that. But as far as where we move forward, so generally when we get to an action item, we decide where we want it to go. correct? So we make a decision, or we don't, and we just, are comfortable with what we're doing now and want to continue in that? Or are there any requests by the commission as to where you want to go with this issue, this action item? Or,
Since the situation has changed with a ordinance enforcement officer, I would like to see the results of that and not make any changes other than following up on enforcement.
to add to that, I'd like to continue getting the reports to see. So it's like our data, so we can base it on, which we've done a great job. Sarah?
I think just my previous question, if the city manager, anyone on the administrative team had, if they have communicated to other communities how they deal with it, or what would be some ideas of being able to better enforce the 5-day, if it's simple, like same side of the street for 5 days or something, so it doesn't just allow someone to roll a tire, and that just kind of then goes, it's a mess. I'm just trying to figure if there's something out there that, has anyone thought about?
So,
Look hesitant.
I would want to make sure you're done.
Oh, and then one last question also is, what is considered a commercial vehicle? Is that defined?
It should have a commercial license if it's a commercial vehicle. They should have, a license plate itself, should say.
Gotcha, so, okay.
But in general, commercial vehicles going to be a delivery truck, like a panel truck, or could be a semi truck. That's
So something that requires a commercial license.
something that requires a commercial license.
Gotcha, thank you.
So parking is really a values issue, which I think you've heard tonight. It's really a what do we value the most? Anything can be done with the right number of ordinances and the right number of money. The 5-day one is difficult to enforce. It could be better, but because of, so if you look at, if you look in your agenda at 74 and 75, that is just the parking code that the code enforcement officer is responsible for. That doesn't get into any of the other codes that we're having him look at. So it's man-hour intensive to enforce the current ordinance the way it is, because even, and that's not taking into account people just moving in, because there's nothing, obviously there's no current ordinance against parking a car for any amount of time as long as its registration is current and runs. You could leave a car forever according to current ordinances. You can tailor the current ordinances to not include certain types of trailers. We could split it out and be more specific. If we don't find boats as offensive as campers or RVs, we could make different ordinances for each vehicle type. It becomes more complicated and more complex to enforce, but you could tailor the code to specific types of trailers instead of lumping them all together. You could do a permit-based parking where if we say there are specific types of trailers, whether they be RVs or camper trailers in excess of 20 feet or whatever it is, that if you're going to park it, you need a permit and it can only be in the linear feet in front of your property. Again, that requires creating an entire process, being able to give those people some form of, a permit that they can post on their trailer that could be easily seen by a code enforcement officer to say, yes, this one has a permit for this address, so it's good to go. Those are all tasks you can take in doing this. I think Commissioner maybe did a good job of splitting out that there's a lot of different issues involved here. We are doing the curb paint back program. Right now that as a cost savings, we have that programmed over a lot of years. Jim, can you even estimate how many intersections we have in town?
Oh goodness, it's a huge number.
It's,
I don't have any good guess.
yeah.
72 miles of streets.
Right. So, yeah, so to accelerate that program, we could make that a contracted job instead of trying to do it with city employees. Obviously, we've been doing that way. It's a cost savings, and it's better than we've had before. Even if you look at the current code setbacks, the maximum setback from a
corner is 20 feet. We would paint the curves back to 25 or 35 feet, depending on whether it's an approach or a departure, according to current traffic standards. So that could be accelerated, but it would take funding. I think that's probably maybe one that's an easy priority to do because it's a definite fix that would definitely affect visibility, side triangles at each of the intersections. Doesn't fix intersections without curbs. It's hard to paint the grass back 35 feet, so it still wouldn't be a complete solution, but it would be better than what we currently have. So we could prioritize that in future budgets and say, hey, that's something we're going to contract out and get that done sooner rather than later than the current progress we're on. To really enforce the current code will probably take at least summertime part-time employees. It'll probably take temporary employees over the summer to do code enforcement activities. I don't know what that'll cost if you estimate. Have to figure out if we have to put them in the union or not based on whether they're temporary employees. But consider $15 to $20 an hour, however many hours a day, times however many employees you have doing that. Honestly, to keep the 2-hour parking downtown, to follow the street sweeper, to do the the building code enforcement, to do the sidewalk code enforcement. So you're probably talking 2 or 3 temp employees for at least the summer months.
And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at is we can't be everywhere at the same time. Which makes me wonder why we have so many ordinances in the first place. We can enforce them, but even if, if it were to change to a different number of days, you still have the same amount of travel time checking up on this stuff. I'm not sure, I mean, I could see maybe in a few instances, it might be an easier fix for a few. But still, we don't have somebody specifically looking at trailer parking all day long, and I get that. So, I was just, I guess, thinking out loud that even a shorter number of days, I'm not sure would completely solve the issue.
The number of days doesn't matter as much. If it was no overnight parking, that's easy to enforce. That's obviously, I think, that's a values issue again, and you want people to be able to spend any time on the streets, but that's the easiest to enforce.
Anything else, Sarah?
Yeah, no, I think it's, I hate it because I don't feel we have a solution. And, I have a group of constituents that, I feel deserve an answer and I can't supply them. So it doesn't make me feel good, but I just don't know, what the solution is. As far as, I realize we're trying to do more code enforcement. We just can't be everywhere at every time. I don't, I can see some value in no overnight trailers, period. But that's easy for me to say because my livelihood doesn't depend on packing up my trailer every morning and heading off to a job site. And I would not want to make that type of determination without a little more forethought. But I don't know. Maybe it's just up to me to do my own research to try and see what else I can find out there. But I guess, bottom line is I would just like to see more enforcement, if possible, on our current zone ordinance.
Commission, we need to extend the meeting. Can we have a motion for extending the meeting?
Make a motion to extend the meeting.
Do you have a second?
I'll sort of.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Maisie. Roll call.
Chairperson Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Four.
Commissioner Friedman? Commissioner Sandberg?
Hesitantly for.
Extended the meeting.
For
Motion passes.
Understood.
I have an idea I'd like to throw out. I would like to see it continue with what we have because of our new enforcement officer, or ordinance enforcement officer. I'd like to continue and like I mentioned before, see what the data shows us. And then I'm wondering if we add this to Michael's to-do list to look at the parking issue as a, like, you're very good at giving us the whole picture, usually on an issue versus just the parts. And so just looking through this, are there some options, or is it a summertime enforcement issue with the extra staff, just like the parks, staff, or the roaming crew, as we call them? And then maybe have that as something you bring back to us in the future. I don't feel like it's super timely at this time until we get our data, but I would like to see, are there little things we do need to change? What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah. I think we all pretty
Well,
much agree with that.
I would see if some of the fees went up, that would help pay for additional enforcement. Without, somewhere else. I guess I would like to see maybe what that, it would be interesting to see if we hired additional staff, what type of fee structure that would look like to pay for it, so it's self-funded.
The same goes with downtown parking, Well, like, person just paid for 25, that first time 20. Third, fifth step, subsequent times keeps going up higher.
So
yeah.
do-
There's
Sarah,
lots of things like that we should look at.
if we had Michael bring to us a fee, maybe some ideas on fee structure changes, ticketing changes in the future?
Yeah, I think,
And where are we at?
with current, maybe sure season lasts into October, let's see if we can get some data on what's the biggest issues out there. And I guess the point being is, if he has that data, he can come back, I think, with a better fee structure, finding out where the biggest violations are occurring. Or you may know that already, I don't know.
I think it's,
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have the information you need to move this?
Is that vague enough for you?
Or is it vague enough? Yeah.
there's one, I got it.
Okay, got it, all right.
Could I add just one other approach, which is kind of a painless thing all the way around? A couple of years ago, and I think I mentioned it once before, the BID was going to investigate using the high school parking lot, making it available for parking for RVs or whatever. And they'd still be in town. I don't know if this is legally possible in terms of insurance, the insurance aspect of it all. But it would provide parking, off-street parking for large vehicles for the bowls that happens in the summer when the RVs show up. And they mentioned the high school, but I don't know if there's any other property available that could be used for something like that.
You need a hookup though, right? And
Well, they don't all need hookups, no, I don't believe, I don't know.
But that's what campgrounds are for too, that we do, what few we do have in the area. Yeah.
Well, if they're staying, yeah, or if they're staying with somebody here, but that's the vehicle they use to get here,
Right, yeah, how do you get around, yeah.
then they, right.
So are
Sounds
you,
like a good job.
yeah, are you still working with the VID some?
No,
No?
no, I bailed.
You might want to do another meeting.
Maybe you want to approach this. Well, we'll ask around. It's a good question.
Yeah.
All right, so do we need a break? I know, I feel we have 2 items left.
They shouldn't be there very
If you need to take a break, just, and we'll start the next. Okay?
There's something, okay?
All right, next on our action items is to discuss, approve, deny recommendation of planning board for approval of Scott Weisbeck for the city planning board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is usually something that you approve in a consent item. I wanted to just bring it forward because this one's a little different, and so I want to make sure everyone had the story on this one before we. This was, Mr. Wybeck did make an application to the planning board, and they did approve it, or recommended your approval of it. The only difference in this one is Mr. Wesbeck works for CTA. And so there will be at least some situations where you have a conflict of interest and possibly a perceived conflict of interest in many planning board meetings. The zoning commission, I'm not concerned about specifically because zoning's developments, but it will probably be either, if CTA is the firm doing the subdivision, that's obviously a conflict of interest, but it will be competing firms that will be doing many of the subdivisions that come before the planning board. So I just wanted that information out to you before you made a decision on whether to accept it. Because there may be, while I have no doubt Mr. Weisbeck will be very honest broker of the planning board, it does at least occasionally going to have the appearance of conflict of interest.
So do we have confidence that the planning board now is taking baby steps and knows that they actually have to have a quorum before they vote? That they will also know then to have him recuse himself when there's a conflict of interest?
That conversation will absolutely be had. And I think
He could put it on his application.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were
It's
very
already
clear in declaring.
been done.
Yeah, so, but it may have to declare it at certain meetings as well.
Right,
And
that's
we'll-
what I mean, he's gonna have to declare it as it comes up.
We'll make sure both the planning board chairman and vice chairman and Mr. Weisbeck know the parameters for that. We'll give our guidance is, and these are the occasions where we at least would expect you to mention the fact that you work for TTA, and that could be a conflict of interest. This is why he may think it is not, and then give the public a chance to chime in before he votes in any planning board recommendations. But that's still it is a risk the city assumes having him on the board. If a applicant who is denied or recommended for disapproval decides that that was a conflict of interest, there could be a lawsuit. So I wanted to bring that to your attention before you just approve.
How many other people applied?
There were no other applications. So that's the dual-edged sword of this, is he's obviously very well qualified to be on the planning board because he understands most of the issues being brought forward, but that also leads to a conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest.
That was a question I had asked earlier based on the concern here, is that why this candidate? And from what I was told, it was that his knowledge is very much a positive tool for the planning board and the zoning commission as far as having someone with that background.
Well, no, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I was just curious. Is this something where Jay is, I mean, I don't know, can Jay look at the agenda prior? I mean, I don't know what Jay, I don't know. Does Jay look at the agenda prior to the planning board and give some sort of consult prior?
Sometimes, but I think our staff, right now, they can.
Planning board has made great strides in there.
It's a big deal. I
It
mean,
is
one
big.
one slip up and, I mean, even if it's perceived not, I guess I would just feel more comfortable if I knew, the person was conferring with legal prior instead of making those decisions himself.
We probably won't review every agenda for the planning board, but Jim certainly does. And anytime there's that kind of conflict, he'll bring it to me and we'll discuss it. So we have staff that reviews it, it's just not Jay.
Right, yeah. I don't know if we need to have some sort of, something added to our documents that discloses engineering or architectural firms or civil engineering, whatever, everything they do.
It's really probably no different than our current vice chairman for the planning board, who's a real estate agent. It's the same kind of concerns.
Which already got us one lawsuit. That's my concern.
Yes, it's the same type of concern, but I think our process is better. I'm not gonna tell you there's no risk associated with it, because there is.
No, and I'm obviously not mitigating that risk. I'm very concerned because we have a track record of, it's not maybe not making the right decision.
Well-
And that concerns me when you have a volunteer board. And just hoping we can give them more direction.
We are definitely in the process of providing more direction. I won't say we're who we should be, but we're not who we were. We're somewhere in the middle. We're making progress, and I think, I do think we can navigate this. But there are issues that we'll have to look for.
I don't know if it's, we can add Jay doing conflict of interest training for half an hour once a year with each of these boards as they change. Just trying to think of how to be proactive.
We actually are looking at training for all the boards, standardized training across all the boards to cover actually many of the items you've already mentioned tonight. How a quorum works, when you would have a perceived or actual conflict of interest. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of time to put towards it, but we have started working on standardized training. Because I think that is an absolute weakness that we have in the city right now, is we do not train our board members adequately when they volunteer and are appointed to a board.
So I'm going to ask a question off of your concerns. I'll put you on the spot. Would you recommend that we approve this?
I wouldn't recommend against it, but I'm not sure I'd recommend. It's a tough call. It's right on the edge of again, I have no concerns about the individual, but I think there will be perceived conflicts of interest, and I think at times that will leave us open to risk for lawsuit from individuals who aren't happy with the planning board's outcome. Now, I think the one fallback we have on that is the planning board is not a authoritarian. They don't get to make this. They're not a decision-making board. They are only they only make recommendations to the commission. So we do have that as a fallback. So if a individual is unhappy with the recommendation from the planning board, they can't bring that to you during the commission process.
And according to the candidate, he said he will recuse himself.
Yeah, I mean, is that?
Yeah, but he has to understand. It's easy to, he has to be able to delineate that though.
I have a
When he's in a
feeling,
situation.
honestly,
Honestly,
in his situation, he does understand that. the
well,
whole
in this
process.
situation, we would probably make an exception and do individual training just because of the level of risk associated with it. And just bring him in and talk to him and say, listen, you really have to understand the position you can put the city in if you aren't very, studious about making sure that everything is clear.
So they don't work with the Board of Justice?
No.
Are they a split of that?
No, there's just separate, distinct organizations.
Those don't come back to us.
The planning board and so this is technically, and this is something we probably think at some point as well, but this is technically being appointed to both the planning board and the zoning commission. Those bodies are identical except for the commission member and the county member of the planning board.
So let me ask the question differently. If, because of the small number one engineering firms in this community, is this person going to be able to be effective in the position due to the nature of the small community? Granted, I realize we get people from all over, but if I don't know what percentage of our stuff comes through, even if they're using, the Billings firm, CTA and out of Billings, it's still a conflict of interest because they work for the same. So I'm just trying to see if he's even going to be effective and can continue to voice his opinion if 50% or more of what comes through us touches that office.
And so I did a cursory review of that just to see
So you were on trucking.
just to see how often CTA was used, especially for things that would come in front of the planning board. And they're actually one of the least used firms in the city as far as that goes. So there were only a few occasions where I would have thought he would have had to recuse himself or announce a possible conflict of interest.
And if we go back out for bid for engineering firms and happen to go with CTA, would he have to, what happened there?
At that point, we'd have to review, I don't know, in general, the firms assign a person to you as a city engineer, and obviously he couldn't be both.
No, but just again, the conflict of his position, yeah. And then having and knowing the perception, knowing that the city has hired CTA as their engineer for the next 3 years, yet we have one of their members sitting on our planning board.
My guess is we would, and I'm not going to say that this is absolutely true, but I would consult with Jay and some other organizations, but I would say if they were going to apply for that, he would probably have to resign from the board.
To qualify, yeah.
What do you guys think if we give Michael and Jay a little more time before we approve this. To find, I mean, I think because your answer to my question was like yes and no, I think you could probably find that answer out.
I think I'm gonna have a hard time giving you a definitive one on this one, because there is nothing procedurally or legally wrong with him being a member of the board. It's solely a risk management decision.
I was at his interview, and he comes here from Boulder, and with a lot of knowledge, and he's a very well communicating individual. And of course, this is a one-time impression. I think he's, again, very knowledgeable. I think he's also gets it in terms of what's going on. And by that, I mean, he wouldn't have any problem, I don't believe, in accusing himself if there was anything that possibly crossed the line. I know that just his employer has nothing to do with him, his personality, or his honesty. So that's really, I believe, the only thing you can go by, making a judgment.
And did the planning board one vote unanimously?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, he had, there were no red flags. So,
But he was the only one to vote on.
But they haven't always approved.
no, I don't think
Passed.
that, I don't
The
think
only
that played in the decision at all. I really don't. He'd have been hard to beat.
Right, I'm just, yeah, I'm not saying he's not qualified, I'm just saying there's just nobody else either.
No, there
So
was
when you
not.
have somebody qualified, most people are gonna vote, even with the conflict of interest.
But they haven't always done that.
Would guess I'd feel okay with approving if we could say that he would have 30 minutes with Jay of conflict of interest training prior to being seated. Or whatever it takes.
You're making the motion, right?
Yeah.
Say that.
That sounded motion-y.
Well, I don't know, does that make you feel any better?
Well, I was gonna sit down with him regardless. And push come to shove, if you were looking for which way would you go, I would probably recommend him, because he did come, I didn't speak to him personally, but everyone I spoke to said that he was, one, exceptionally qualified, and two, they believe that he would do a good job of, and I think that's probably what makes me feel better, is everyone talked through the fact that there are possible conflicts of interest, so at least everyone was aware.
Going open to why, eyes wide open.
Yeah, at least everyone is considering it, which is a plus.
I just think it's, some people think those conflicts of interest are very black and white, and they're not, so. yeah.
And I think what he's bringing to the board is that knowledge that for that planning document we kept talking about today. So that might help to have that expertise.
I would move to approve Mr. Whiteback with the condition that he receive conflict of interest training prior to being seated.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Sandberg and a second by Maybe for approval of Mr. Weisbeck. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Commissioner Steinberg. Commissioner Maybe.
4.
Motion passes. Last item is, last action item, sorry, is to discuss, approve, deny, request a call record from Prospera for a contract extension of the sub-recipient agreement for the Community Development Block Grant Revolving Loan Fund.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thankfully, this one is pretty straightforward. Prospera is currently managing our CDBG revolving loan fund. The county and I have talked, and we think that it's probably best that we go out for at least an RFQ or maybe an RFP, but we prefer to get through that process before the current contract expires. So this is just an extension through the 31st of the year to allow us to work through that process.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see here.
And will these be prorated?
Yes.
Do we need to have that listed?
The fee structure is based on the month per month, so.
So we need to make a decision tonight to approve or deny the extension of this contract. So do you have any comments or questions first? Any public? comment? I forgot public comment on that, sorry, I apologize.
Be respectful now.
I want to make a comment on this because I really commend the city for going out for an RFP for this. We used to have Nittany Graftworks. We used to have a whole bunch of different groups that administer this, but we have some pretty capable people right here in Livingston that could administer this very well. So I just want to say as a part of the public that I appreciate the fact that you might go out for an RFP on this. Thank you.
We are going out for an RFP, correct? Yeah, so,
I think that there's a
yeah.
competitive process.
So do I have a motion from the commission to approve or deny the extension of this contract?
Make a motion to approve the extension of CDBG revolving loan fund.
Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Holbrook,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg, Commissioner Maybe.
Or,
Motion passes. City manager comments.
usually I defer a 3-hour one, I actually had a couple for you tonight. Most of them apply to our next agenda. Just a couple of things one that you are gonna have and one that I'm gonna offer, and you can decide if you want. If everything goes according to plan, we should have Northwest Transportation Plan final for the next commission meeting. We're gonna go ahead and present that. Along with that, I've actually been working on a comprehensive history of separated grade crossings in Livingston. So we're gonna go back to the beginning and just do a history of everything the city's ever done officially for a separated grade crossing from the beginning, all the resolutions, the money that's been spent, where it's been spent, what the sources were. So we'll have a comprehensive history of everything that's been done up to this point. I know a lot of people know a lot of the history, but even I was surprised. The very first official city document was in March of 1977 for an underpass at Starbuck. So it's been about 41 years of, I'll call it progress, towards a crossing. So that is going to be available to you next time. So be looking for that. I'll try to get out early because there's a lot of information. There's a lot of, especially when you get into the finances and where the money came from, where it goes, what strings were attached to it, what's available, MOUs with MRL, MOUs with MDT. There's a ton of stuff out there. The other thing I would like to offer up to you is, as the county commission has decided to go forward with a mill levy for the ambulance services, I would like to offer just a review or an overview of how emergency services are funded and the joint nature between the county and the city. So if you just review, not so much from the budgetary perspective, but we'll use budget numbers, but just how it's administered, where the money currently comes from, how much of it is city money, how much of it is county money, what a mill levy would look like, and how that would affect both city and county services and residents. So it would just be a kind of an overview of the entire ambulance service and how it's funded currently and how a mill levy would change that.
Are you going to bring that to us next time as well, both issues, or are you splitting them up?
Depends on what you want. I offer them both to you next time if you want them. If, 3.5 hours is a little much tonight, we can split them up. It's up to you guys.
Why don't you see what else is on the agenda, and then make that decision? Yeah.
I think it'd be very beneficial though. I know I can't speak. I have difficulty answering these questions about what exactly the county levy is, because we're in the county, so we're paying it too, and how that affects the city funding. So I think it would be, for me, beneficial so I could answer people's questions when they ask me about it.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Lauren? Sarah?
Oh, well, that was it. One of them was the levy, just a better understanding. And I think too, a recent article on the pool, I'm getting tons of questions that the pool's closing tomorrow forever. And so I know that we, you know, it's not a new topic. We know it's a money pit. And we need to do something different to sustain it. But there was quite a bit of information in the paper, which was more information than I felt I've received at a commission meeting. So I feel I need, I will say I get a lot of questions on it and I can't answer them because I don't know. And I don't know the best, Mike, for you. I know that there's a lot of items before next budget that we need to talk about and that are going to probably be restructured differently. But so I don't know if it's, I don't want to wait till January to have this discussion because I have community members now who are really concerned about the pool and have the impression that it's closing, it will never reopen again. And if that's something that the city has decided, I guess we as commissioners need to know that. So I would just like an update and a better understanding of the city pool.
Sure. The short answer is no decision has been made, but one's gonna have to be made in the next, probably within the next year.
Right, I figured that, but so. Yeah. Okay, well, I will answer them that it will not be closed forever at the end of the season.
Just moving back towards the second should
The lagoon.
I want to thank the Public Works people for wrapping up a huge thing. And we have a lot of people in this town all the time. I mean, a lot of big events, a lot of new events. Pretty exciting period. So I want to thank everybody involved. Got all this together. I yield.
I love Porch Fest. I thought that was great. That was a good time. I didn't spend a lot of time at it, but again, once again, kudos to staff of the city for the downtown work. The customers are happy down there, and that's all that matters to me. I yield.
I just want to say, I think we do live in an amazing place. And as someone who I just drove in from Oregon today, this afternoon, and there's not a lot of construction. The roads are nice and clean. The traffic flows relatively well. Other than that, those four-way, uncontrolled that we all complain about. But we're an amazing town, and having been through multiple towns in the past month, really, I think we should be proud. And I think our city staff and commission does a lot to help that along. That's all I have to say. Last thing of the night. Can I have a motion from the commission for adjournment?
Second.
I have a motion by Greenman, second by Schwartz. For adjournment. I don't have to say that. This meeting ends at 9:57.
Oh, my goodness, that's a long time to sit here. It's not.
Good evening. How are you? Good.